and we're live, and I will post it. So I know everybody in here for the most part, but we'll kind of keep this as informal as possible. I've got you guys for the next 3 hours anyway, for WFDSS training. When we set this up, I worked with the FMOs, asked them to work with the DMs on setting the date and time and kind of a format, you know, as far as time frame, how long you guys want to do it. Was told Elko wanted to do an abbreviated session, so that's why we're only doing 3 hours this afternoon versus the full 8 hours that we were doing in other locations as well. We do have, that's going to be plenty of time to go through the actual WFDSS stuff itself. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to start with, and then we're going to get into WFDSS EDU. Part of the training is actually getting into the accounts. So a couple weeks ago, I sent out an email that's got instructions for everybody. Hopefully you all have your FAMLOT accounts, you have your WFDSS EDU, your WFDSS prod accounts. If not, if you put the request in now, I can get you set up as soon as we take a break and get into the training. So that's one of the things I'm doing during the training is anybody that's in the training that doesn't have the account, ask them to sit down, actually request the account right then and there, getting them approved then and there so they have access for the rest of the year. I will kind of get into some of the housekeeping things and then just get right into it because again, trying to squeeze a lot of information into 3 hours, but we'll definitely spend as much time going over what we need to go over as possible. So up on the screen there, I've got the PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to start with, and then after I get done with the PowerPoint presentation, we'll have a few discussion items, and then one of the discussion items, I'm just going to caveat it here, is the authorities table. So I can facilitate that discussion as you guys need. But there's obviously a lot of information and a lot of coordination that's going to happen from here until the start of fire season and then especially through fire season to make sure that we're all on the same page with those authorities tables. Specifically for WFDSS, WFDSS is now dual authorities. So there's a Bureau authority signature and there's a Wildland Fire Service authority signature on the WFDSS decision. And WFDSS is set up now to do multiple approvers. If you remember from last year when we first transitioned to the next generation about a year ago. There was a bug in the system where you could only have one approver. That's changed now. It's been updated to where you can have multiple approvers. So WFDSS is really going to help facilitate a lot of the discussion around our fires, how we manage fires, and specifically that discussion that has to happen to get a common operating picture between incident commander, Bureau representative, and Wildland Fire Service. It'd be fire chief at this point is the signature authority for the WFDSS decision. So those three people, WFDSS is going to be, from my point of view, WFDSS can be the common operating picture that all three can log into and have those discussions that they need to have and make sure everybody's on the same page. So I think this year we're going to see a little bit more of an operational need for WFDSS where ICs can actually log into WFDSS and see the decisions because you're not going to want to have to rely on somebody emailing an IC a decision. As an IC, I'm going to want to go into the decision and see it for myself. So I'm not A, reliant on somebody emailing me a PDF, and B, I'm not reliant on somebody else's interpretation of what the decision says. I can log into the WFDSS decision and read the decision as it's stated in the decision. So that's kind of some of the key things that I'm kind of highlighting in this year's training that I wanted to point out to as we get into it. Let me get my screen set up here real quick. So we'll do a quick round of introductions just for get the formalities out of the way. My name is Dylan Rader. I'm fire planner for what was Nevada BLM, is now Nevada Wildland Fire Service. And you guys see me around the office. I have a cubicle over in the Wells Field office, and you guys graciously have hosted me now for, I guess, the last year and a half or so since return to work. So Craig, you want to start? We'll just go down the rows.
Matt Murphy, Fields Program Manager, Wildland Fire Service.
Center Field Firefighter.
Certified District Manager with BLM.
Yep.
And also,
JFM with Wells.
Elizabeth Fuentes, Field Manager. Yeah.
This is Spence AFM for Prospero. I'm from Houston.
All right, great, thank you. And they, I'll kind of keep an eye on that. I don't think anybody signed into the Teams meeting, but again, we're recording the Teams meeting for future reference. And I'm on production Wi-Fi, so it seems to be working pretty good down here. If you guys want to sign in to WFDSS, the course is designed for you guys to actually be working in WFDSS alongside and just kind of watching what I'm doing, but spending more time on your computer looking at WFDSS. So by all means, if you need to go get your computer, go get your computer. I signed into production Wi-Fi, seem to sign in just fine. I also have a MiFi set up in the back window there. If you need to grab that signal, the password is on the MiFi itself. So just want to make sure that's out there. Part of the training, you'll hear me reference either the agenda, the presentation, or the WFDSS guide. No changes, no big changes to the WFDSS guide from last year. I'm going to highlight some of the taskings from the FMO group and how we updated the guide for this year. One of the big improvements, I guess, that I've made in the training from last year to this year is there's now a link tree. So rather than that giant email with all those links, there's one link to a Nevada fire planning link tree. And within that Nevada fire planning link tree, just for the graphic over here, I have so if you go into the link tree, you'll see this side up over here under the WFDSS training. All of the links that we're going to access are in that as well. For the roster, I've got the roster set up. You guys signed in person. You don't need to sign into the online roster. I do have another training survey set up on that link tree. At the end of the training, if you guys can give me some feedback on the training, it helps me prepare for next year's training by selecting topics that you guys want to see covered. And it also gives me feedback on what I can do differently or what I can do better. Okay, so what is WFDSS? WFDSS is a web-based platform that's been with us in one form or another since about 2009. Prior to WFDSS in 2009, we had a standalone desktop program called WFSA, the Wildland Fire Situation Assessment. Basically did the exact same thing WFDSS did. It was a standalone, it was basically an access database that used a little bit of GIS, and you put in all of your preloaded land management plan, fire management plan, direction, just like we do now in Spatial Fire Planning Service. But 2009 was a big year in federal fire planning. When we talk M581, when we look at the Red Book, 2009 was when they did the most recent update to the federal wildland fire policy and a lot of the overarching guidance that gives us direction on how we manage fire within the bureaus. And a lot of that was based off of WFDSS. You'll see here, this screen here, a lot of the topics that are taken out of there are still valid today. We have the exact same resource availability. When we get into PO 4 and 5, we always have resource shortages. Management of large fires, the cost, 95%, 95% of our fires take up 95% of our fire suppression costs. That's the way it's been for the last 10, 15 years. And until we see some significant changes, that's the way we're going to continue to manage our fires. The smallest percentage of fires equals the largest amount of expenditures. Again, same problem statement. And the initial strategic response decisions are most important in terms of resource commitments and expenditures. This is taken out of the federal wildland fire policy, but again, in 2009, the policy stated that it was changed, right? Previous to that, you couldn't have multiple objectives on a fire. Once a fire was decided it was full suppression, the entire fire was managed for full suppression. In 2009, the policy was updated to say that a wildland fire could be concurrently managed for multiple objectives across the extent of the wildland fire incident. So rather than saying every fire was full suppression, every fire was monitor, every fire was fire use, there's a lot of terminology that we were throwing out back then across the entire extent of the fire. The 2009 policy allowed you to have multiple objectives on a single fire. The other significant updates, primarily, in relation to this training, was in 2009. This bullet is in there. Managers will use a decision support process to guide and document wildfire decisions. The process will provide situational assessment, analyze hazards and risk, define implementation actions, and document decisions and rationale for those decisions. This was the guidance in 2009. This is what came up with WFDSS. So basically, WFDS and the principles of decision support. It provides information to decision makers, to line officers when they are making the decisions. So when you have fires, WFDS is preloaded with information where you can log in, go to that fire, look at the layers, look at the map information that is loaded up into WFDS, and you can make your decision based off of the known information, what you know about the fire. Obviously, decision support does not replace decision making. It enhances decision making. And then decision support information comes from a variety of sources, and it also has applications across a wide range of scales and concentrations. So what WFDS provides in terms of decision support is that risk and decision sharing simply and efficiently. Forces everybody to log into one website, forces everybody to work in one document. Kind of the phrase that I use, there's a quote from Eisenhower, and I butcher it every time. Plans are worthless. The planning process is invaluable. That's what WFDS is too. The actual decision that you get out of WFDS, while it's important because it contains guidance direction that you need to convey down to your incident commanders that they use to convey down to their ground resources, at the same time, this is a common operating picture where incident commanders, agency administrators, and anybody else that's involved in the WFDS decision can all look at the same map, at the same information, and look at those risks and decide what needs to be decided. It documents strategic decisions. It utilizes appropriate fire behavior modeling, economic principles, and information technology. And the information is used for the completion of an operational plan. So no changes, right? Now there's new WFDS. The only difference between new WFDS and old WFDS is new WFDS is probably 30% as capable as old WFDS is right now. When they made the transition from new WFDS to old WFDS, they were going to do it in phases. They got the minimum viable product done, which was what we got last year, and that's what we're still working off of due to budget constraints and lack of access to continue to develop technology. We hopefully it's just a short-term thing, but the point is that even though we have what we call next generation WFDS, the capabilities of the platform are still significantly less than what we had in WFDS Classic. It is, though, much better in the fact that it's more map focused, where WFDS basically had to build their own ArcGIS Online, what was in WFDS Classic, was like an early form of ArcGIS Online without AGOL support. And that's what drove the cost of WFDS up so much, was that and the data cost. This WFDS is AGOL based. And as we get into it, for those of you guys that got into it last year, the map is the center of WFDS. Everything is based on the map. All the other information as part of the decision is secondary to the map, but it's spatially driven. Some of the other things, WFDS, it's all based off of National Feature Service layers, so it's dynamic. We don't need to update. Where WFDS, we had to send in GIS updates every year. All these AGOL products are dynamically updated, so as long as there's a service, somebody's maintaining the service, you don't have to update your data in WFDS. We update our data in Spatial Fire Planning Service. Fire modeling, that's one of the significant limitations right now. Currently within WFDS, we still only have FS Pro modeling. There is no near-term fire modeling. Similar to what we had in WFDS Classic, all of that is accomplished, can be accomplished in FDS. Some of the other things, FIMS, it doesn't interact with FIMS. So for those of you that went through our fire danger operating plan workshop back in February, we learned about FIMS. FIMS is also going to be interoperable with WFDS, and basically for FS Pro runs and for weather information, it's going to read that information from FIMS. And then also Spatial Fire Planning Service. We use a Spatial Fire Planning Service. Sarah is your data manager. There's a handful of data managers. Craig, Matt are both data managers as well within Spatial Fire Planning Service. That means locally you have a local data manager that can update any language, any text that's derived, that's pulled out of Spatial Fire Planning Service and goes into your WFDS decisions. That information can be updated locally now without a need from NOC approvers, any other approvers. They have the ability to do that locally. Some other major improvements since the rollout up here in the upper left-hand corner. We got multiple approvers. So last year where you only had one approver was really restrictive, really limited. I'm glad we didn't run into any significant issues with that. Now we have multiple approvers, so much easier to do that. The entire PMS, that should say 236, I apologize. It says 263. The entire PMS 236, which is the NWCG risk complexity assessment form, that is entirely contained within WFDS now. So there's a requirement to complete those on all type 3 fires. If you complete it in WFDS, that satisfies that requirement. If you don't do it in WFDS, it's a paper form or a PDF that has to be completed outside of everything else. Irwin, obviously, historical decisions, that's a big one too now. Last year we couldn't get any historical decisions out of WFDS. Now you can download historical WFDS classic decisions out of WFDS Next Generation. You're going to hear me kind of reference WFDS. I'm trying not to call it WFDS Next Generation because now that it's open, it's just WFDS. So if you hear me say WFDS Next Generation, I'm really trying to delineate the difference between what came out last year versus what we're using now. Also, one of the other improvements is this automatic validation of required decision elements. That's a nice feature. You'll see it when we get into the decision today. It's actually a checklist at the end of the decision that shows you what's done, what needs to be done, where last year we were just kind of hit refresh until everything was done. Now that checklist automatically populates. So it was a good tool, you know, but hopefully this makes it a little better tool. Some of the other things that we're still not going to see present, system messages and user notifications. In WFDS Classic, all kinds of notifications, right? Somebody drew a planning area that came onto your jurisdiction, WFDS would send you a notification. Somebody sent a decision that needed approval, WFDS would send you a notification. There's no notifications in WFDS now. So as an agency administrator, as a bureau rep, if you need to approve a decision, you have to go into WFDS, log in, open it up, and approve the decision. Hopefully there's notifications being worked on in the near future, but nothing as of yet. So we had a RDNA refresher a couple of weeks ago for those of you who were able to sit through it. I was lucky enough to sit through it, and the reason I thought I was lucky enough was because we actually had Jason Fallon, who is our Intel branch chief now for the Wild. I think I'm butchering his title as well, but he's a branch chief for the Wildland Fire Service. He basically oversees the Intel side and WFDS. He was on the video, so it's kind of good to see some leadership direction regarding the use of WFDS. Talked about WFDS being that common operating picture again that we're talking about. The middle bullet there, ensure decisions are published timely and updated as needed. Again, WFDS is kind of the new WFDS Next Generation is kind of a new concept in that we used to do periodic assessments in a decision. Now, every time you log into WFDS, and whether you update a periodic assessment or you publish a new decision, you're doing the exact same thing. There's no difference. So if you're just doing a periodic assessment, you're going into your decision rationale, you're typing in whatever that periodic assessment text is, you're hitting submit, and you're publishing a new decision. That's all it is. There is no more standalone periodic assessment, if that makes sense. So want to make sure we're clear on that. Another thing that Fallon brought up was ISAP, which was a good thing too, because we started talking this last year. We do have policy whenever we have an incident, whenever we have a complex incident management team managing a fire, we're required to go through the ISAP process or incident strategic alignment process. We can use ISAP to do that, but we're required to go through the incident strategic alignment process. So with WFDS, there's less users. We're down from 12 users to 5 users. Those user roles are up here. When you first sign into WFDS, you're going to get viewer access, just default. For anybody that's in here, you need to make sure that you have editor access on both sides, production and training, okay? Additional roles, fire behavior analyst. If you meet the training requirements, I can give you fire behavior analyst roles. And I want to make sure people are clear on this. You don't need to be an FBAN to get fire behavior analyst roles in WFDS. There are some training requirements that we used to enforce, but fire behavior analyst in WFDS is more of a role-based permission. And as long as you have minimum training being S495, you can be a fire behavior analyst in WFDS. So by all means, I encourage folks to do that because we need fire behavior analysts in WFDS. We don't need FBANs in WFDS. We need people that know how to do fire modeling in WFDS. And it's fairly cut and dry when you get right down to it. Geographic area editor, that's the role that I play. There's 4 of us now across the Great Basin. There should be a memo coming out from the coordinating group here shortly that highlights who all those geographic area editors are. Again, under the new concept of people having to sit within the geographic boundary, we're down from 9 geographic area editors last year to 4 this year. So keep that in mind too as they're going through the transition. Definitely decreased capacity there. One of the things that I'm going to talk in this training and I'm going to talk to a little bit is fire modeling. And fire modeling, I think, is important because it's one of the relatively unlocked or unused parts of WFDS that I think we can get much better at. And part of my tasking from the FMO group was to continue to develop local skill sets to help facilitate fire modeling. We did that in the WFDSS training we did in Reno a couple weeks ago. And then we've got there's also a wrist workshop coming up that I highly encourage anybody that's interested in fire modeling to sign up for. Fire modeling is a key part of WFDS in that with the fire modeling, you're able to identify values at risk, and then you're able to quantitatively determine how long do you have until that value is impacted by your fire, and when the fire hits that value based off of basic fire behavior, what is the severity of that? How big a flame is going to be that hits that value? And you can basically use severity and time determination to help do a quantified risk analysis to determine when those values are going to be impacted and what the impact to those values are going to be when they are impacted. Locally, Matt is an FBAN, so you guys do have some local depth. I know Matt's wearing a lot of hats, so he probably doesn't want to wear an FBAN hat during the summer too. But the reason I bring that up is because when you guys are doing WFDS decisions, having that type of skill set is important. I know Matt's going to be approving decisions, but actually having an FBAN or having an LTAN or having access to people that can do that modeling is important, even on these initial decisions, probably even more so on the initial decisions than on a team decision once the team's already taken over for the fire. So there's a couple of options we're going to talk to. The primary option that we're going to talk to, though, is there's a form. There's a RIST form that we can utilize to get RIST support, which is Remote Incident Support Team. The Forest Service manages this program, and part of that program is they do WFDS decision support, including fire behavior modeling. So they have a pool of LTANs and FBANs that if you fill out the form, put in the request, within 2 to 4 hours, you're going to have an FS Pro run in WFDS to look at. And if you're requiring more than that, you're going to have more than that if you give them additional leeway and time to work with. But they're going to have a pretty quick turnaround to get that initial FS Pro run to you, because that can be done relatively quickly without a lot of calibration.
Do we need to, with that risk program, are they geographic editors too, or are they only just?
No, not all of them.
Do we have to find out who they are and then give them access to our WFDS?
No.
Okay.
No. They all have the fire behavior analyst role.
So
So with that, they're able to log in and get access to the decisions.
Okay.
If you want them to type into your decision, you're going to need to make them an editor
okay.
in your decision, right? But yeah, they can do everything they need to do without that. Right. Have you used RIST? Have you?
No.
Okay. I think it's,
But
I'm
we did-
definitely encouraging fees.
We were doing it a while back on fires. It was not called risk, but
Yeah.
you were doing it, but you had to get out, you had to be added. You had to call the place
Yeah.
and say, I'll be working on it, get me added here with this.
Yep. So there's a link on the link tree for that form itself. And again, I referenced the coordinating group memo that should be coming out here shortly. The reason why we have the coordinating group issue that memo is because that memo highlights this process as well. So with the Great Basin, I'm encouraging everybody, if you are doing a WFDS decision, fire off that form right off the bat. I mean, just get somebody working on it, because that way you can have an FS Pro run in your WFDSS decision in, like I said, within a 3 to 4 hour window. And hopefully by the time you need to publish your decision, you can actually be looking at that FS Pro run and helping it to inform your planning area, inform what are your values at risk, and again, what kind of time frame do we have until those values are going to be impacted. So all of that can be done just from a basic FS Pro run. So this is, again, risk-informed decision process. We're going to not get into this a lot because I want to get directly into the policy. If you click on the link, if you join the Teams meeting, you'll have access to the PDF file. I know some of these are kind of hard to read up here on the screen. All this is out of the red book. I have not updated it for 2026 yet because we don't have a 2026 red book yet. Hasn't been issued. So we're lagging a little bit. So we're still looking at our 2025 policy, but luckily most of that hasn't changed. One of the things that I did want to highlight here on this first slide is when we talk about responsibilities and authorities, when you get into WFDSS, when you talk about incident commanders, ICs are responsible for right here, assisting with WFDSS documentation and support in close coordination with local officials if requested by the delegating agency administrators. So I highlight that just to show that there is more of a role in WFDSS than just saying, I didn't get the WFDSS decision. Can you email it to me? Some of the other things I wanted to highlight here, and again, I'm not going to highlight everything. I just want to highlight published decision. This is the only direction for what goes into a WFDSS decision. There is no policy, there is no template, there is no IM that states that your WFDSS decision must have this, and this in it. This is the policy that basically says what we have in our WFDSS decisions. So the reason I bring that up is because WFDSS gives you a lot of creativity leeway to make your decisions as thorough and as robust as you want. But as long as you're meeting the minimums and your decisions are meeting these elements, that's basically the minimum viable product for WFDSS decisions as well. So the initial decisions, when are the decisions? There is no hard and fast date. Everyone asks me, what day should you do the decision on? Day 3, day 5, somewhere in between there, right? I can't tell you specifically because there is no hard and fast policy, but this is the definition for escapes initial attack or exceeds initial response. So somewhere within that 3 to 5 day window, if you still have a fire that is into extended attack and still being managed actively, you should definitely have a decision done. The other reason for a decision is if the objectives include both protection and resource benefit objectives. So that would be any kind of fire use. Okay, so and I use the term fire use because I don't even know what we're calling fire right now. We've got conflicting direction between secretary guidance and National Fire Board memos that they're trying to change suppression terminology, and it's really not very clear right now. But basically, anytime we were doing anything that we considered other than full suppression, that would have required a WFDSS decision. If you wanted to exercise any kind of management option other than full suppression, you would have to have a WFDSS decision completed and documented. New decisions required when the periodic assessments indicates the course of action is no longer valid, if the fire moves beyond the planning area, if the incident exceeds the established agency thresholds or cost, which there are no longer the $5 million and $10 million cost notifications that we used to have to make. Those cost thresholds have now been tossed out the window through the authorities table. We are still managing cost, and WFDSS is still documenting what that estimated fire final cost is, but there is no more notifications for a fire over 5 million or a fire over 10 million that we used to have previous to the merger. So you're going to see that I'm highlighting a few changes. That's kind of what I'm highlighting is what's different between last year and this year. And there's some differences.
That's not true for Forest Service. Cost is still a thing in the Forest Service.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cost is still a thing on the Forest Service.
So if we have a fire with Forest Service land,
Yeah.
that's involved with that.
Yeah.
Cost can.
And Forest Service will still have agency administrators.
Yeah.
So wrap your mind around that, what we're going to be calling. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this information here is in the red book. What this is stating is that if there are other agencies, there's a policy requirement in the red book to address how we include those other agencies in the WFDSS decision based on whether or not they want to be full-on active participants or whether maybe they just have a little portion of the planning area that they know isn't going to be impacted, but they still have a policy requirement to stay involved. So there is language in the red book that is also in the WFDSS guide. There's also some language in there, and we've actually had this occur for when other agencies initiate a WFDSS decision and includes us in the planning area, but doesn't include us as approvers. We've had to go through this recourse before, just within the last couple of years. I won't state which neighbor, California, but it was a neighbor to the west of us.
I mean, that could definitely happen for us. They have a fire in the Rubies. There used to be a big planning area that touches BLM, but we don't need to be an approver for it,
Right, but you still have policy that says you have to.
even if our planning area protection.
You have BLM policy that says if you have any BLM jurisdiction involved, you have to be an active agency administrator.
In the planning area, right?
Yep. That's been there. We've had that in place for a while. Yeah, good thing we're Wildland Fire Service. We just get to pick and choose whichever policy you like now.
That's right.
What's that?
What's gonna be different?
So they will have an agency rep on there. If it touches BLM, if the
Yeah.
planning area touches BLM, they'll have the agency rep signing for it.
Yes.
Okay.
And the Wildland Fire Service will have an approver that also approves that same decision every time.
Okay. Great.
Which is different. That's what's different.
Yeah.
Right.
Got a lot of stuff to do, Craig.
So we're going to talk a little bit about ISAP, but again, this is an hour that we cover in the afternoon session for the other trainings. So I'm just going to hit kind of what's in this graphic first and really talk about one, the policy. So the policy states that a formalized strategic planning process should be utilized during all BLM fires that have a complex incident management team assigned. Strategic planning ensures a common understanding by the agency administrators, members of the CIMT of the values at risk, including responder risks, the strategic actions to be implemented and the timing of those actions and the anticipated probability of success. So all of that, right? So that's part of ISAP. So when we do ISAP is generally up here in kind of this graphic, it explains the cycle. And if you look at it, I know the yellows are the IMT responsibilities, the greens are the agency administrator's responsibility, and the purple are the shared responsibilities. So you can see that like during the transition, when a team is coming in, they have a responsibility to identify what are those values at risk that they need to protect and what are they building their operational plan around. But at the same time, the agency administrator has a responsibility of publishing a WFDSS decision that also highlights those critical values at risk and also coming up with a strategic course of action in WFDSS that supports whatever land and resource management plan direction they have for that area. And you can see kind of the time frame that we're talking about here as well. So the point of the graphic is that if you follow this process right here, it takes days 3 or 4 for a team to really kind of get their feet under them and really get everything firing and get their feet under them, get the resources on the ground, functioning how they want to function under their chain of command, following whatever guidance they're giving. By doing these WFDSS decisions early and making sure that those critical values at risk are identified in the WFDSS decision, you're speeding up the team's process because they have that information to start their process even before an end briefing. So that's one of the things that we're really going to try to highlight is the role of WFDSS in this ISAP process is highlighting values at risk. If you can highlight on your map and show what are the critical values at risk, how do you want them protected, and what are your top 5 priorities, right? And I talk top 5, it can be top 10. But when we start talking more than 10, how many priorities get done when you have more than 10 priorities? Right. So really try to limit the number of priorities that you're talking when you're talking about this ISAP process too. But the key point of it is by identifying those critical values at risk, you're forming that first pillar in the ISAP process And then everything else kind of falls into place after that. So those values at risk can be identified in the WFDS decision. And hopefully in your WFDS decisions, we're doing that to some capacity.
So you said the ICs are logging in now and be able to grab the decision on their own. Are we adding them? Do they have the same?
As an approver, no,
No, but are we adding them to get access? So they're able to pull that anywhere?
not necessarily.
Because if we order in a team, if say we place an order, can they go in and grab our previous right then's with this decision before we even start working on the next one? And start gathering those.
You would have to make them an editor,
Or
right?
can we-
Once you approve, so there's the approve and then there's the publish. Once you publish, that's when any viewer in WFDS has access.
They're
Right.
viewers, that's how they're getting that.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
So if you wanted to publish that, right, you could add them as an editor if you wanted them in early, but as soon as you publish, that makes any viewer can have access
Yeah.
to your decision. They don't log into the guts of the decision, they have access to the PDF.
Yeah, right,
And they can't edit,
right, that's fine.
right?
But if we're wanting to give them that information early, we can do that. That's the way they do it. They
Yeah.
can grab it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most, I guarantee you, anyone on a complex system management team is operating in WFDS now. Anybody on the planning section, they've already got your WFDS downloaded, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's a good consideration, it's a good discussion to have at that end, because it helps set them up for success, and it helps set you up for success too, because it gets them into your WFDS decision. So if you need additional information from them loaded into your WFDS decision, whether it's from a SOPL, whether it's from a FOBS, whether it's from an FBAN, an LTAN, they can start accessing your decision and working on your decision. So
Yeah,
don't, by all means, I'm under the train of thought of open that decision up to as many people, get those people in there because they can help support you as quick as possible. The other thing I want to talk to you a little bit, this is really hard to read, is the WFDS scorecard. And the WFDS scorecard was based off of last year's. We've talked about it on a couple FMO calls. We've talked about it on a couple of the fuels and fire planners calls. I was asked to blend this into this year's WFDS training and also make the elements, make the criteria that I'm judging the WFDS decisions off of. Make that part of the checklist as well that's in that WFDS guide. So again, I'm going to go to a spreadsheet real quick because that's kind of hard to read. But before I go to that spreadsheet and talk about last year's WFDS decisions, I wanted to get into the authorities table because this is a pretty good discussion usually that kind of happens out of this. And I just wanted to highlight, so this is the original authorities table that came out, what, 2 weeks ago now, 2.5 weeks ago? Since then, we've had the secretary's memo that came out, and then we also had the Wildland Fire Service authorities table that came out about 1.5 weeks ago. So this is already outdated information. Not outdated. There's better, more current information out there than this, but I wanted to put this in there and talk to this and caveat the discussion with anybody that should be involved should have gotten an invite for the May 7th meeting for the Wildland Fire Service. And definitely all of our agency administrators, all of you folks here in this room should be part of that meeting. There's going to be a lot of questions that get brought up, and I hope that there's some clarification because we've been pushing up some clarification requests over the last month or two, and we haven't gotten much information back on a lot of this stuff. But what I do want to highlight in here is the responsibilities. So in regards to FMPs, the bureaus are going to still continue their current process of district manager has the sole approving authority of a fire management plan. The BLM 1203 has always stated that district managers cannot delegate that responsibility below the DEM, and that responsibility is going to stay with the bureaus, with the district manager. If the bureau decides to delegate that responsibility down further, they'll update their 1203 process sometime here in the next, 6 to 8 months, and it'll be changed. But for now, that's going to stay at the district manager. So district managers will be the signature, will be the approving official on FMPs. For Spatial Fire Planning Service, the fire service will update, but the bureaus will provide the data. So that's again a shared role between fire service and bureau. Same thing we've been doing, you know, between fire planners, we've been updating spatial fire planning service. But now that's stating that we're gonna be responsible for the updates, but the bureaus will be responsible for providing us the data. So we just have to come up with like an annual process, you know, here's what we have, what needs to be updated. That's what we do during this training as well. Big one, agency administrators, bureau representatives. Bureaus will serve as the bureau rep on land and resource management issues for both wildfires and prescribed fires. Okay, and the Wildland Fire Service will be the agency administrator making the decisions for wildland fire activities and operations on both wildfires and prescribed fires. And I wanted to get down a little bit further as we get into the WFDSS decision, because that'll kind of clarify that a little bit. But the one thing here, the agency administrator role is different than the individual having the agency administrator qualification. The agency administrator qualification topic under the training and qualifications category of the table. The agency administrator qualification is no longer, right? AADM is now out the window. So that's going to be something that the Bureau is going to have to adjust to. This table talks about the Bureau will decide what training is requirement, whether they want to keep the qualification or whether they want to do away with it entirely. But as of this table, that AADM qualification is no longer a qualification between the Fire Service and the Bureau. On the Bureau side, they are now Bureau representatives. On the Fire Service side, they are an agency administrator, not an AADM qualification, if that makes sense. I know it's kind of, does it make sense? Matt, does it make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's the fire chief is the agency administrator and their rep, and the bureau has reps.
Yeah, exactly. A few other things I wanted to kind of highlight here, the team, right? So both Fire Service and the Bureau, Fire Service and Bureau will jointly in-brief IMTs. So again, joint responsibility shared between the Fire Service and the Bureau. The reason I bring this up is because part of a good in-briefing is having a good WFDSS decision. And by doing a good in-briefing, we can help set these teams up for success as well. And that's one of the tools we're going to be highlighting is a shared a story map that we set up to where you can do that. So this is the WFDSS portion right here. Both the Fire Service and bureaus will approve decisions in WFDSS, same across the board. So dual signature authorities in there. Cost threshold notifications. Fire Service will not be required to make cost threshold notifications, and bureaus will no longer be required to make cost threshold notifications within their bureaus. So the cost notifications are out the window as well. AADM, Fire Service personnel will not need the AADM qualification as defined in the supplement, and bureaus will no longer require the AADM qualification. This is the point I was talking about. The Fire Service will work with the bureaus to provide wildland fire training as requested to support filling the bureau representative role on wildland fires. So what that sounds like is if you need help, call me and I'll come over and train you. In reality, what that means is at the national level, somebody from the Fire Service is working with somebody from the Bureau, and they're deciding what that training requirement is going to look like from the Bureau, and they're deciding what support role the Fire Service is going to provide in getting the Bureau to that point. So larger scale, that's kind of the big picture for training requirements and so forth. The other thing too, I just have to highlight that I was flattered to see that WFDSS training actually made a line item on the authorities table. Out of all the important stuff that we have getting ready for fire season, WFDSS training was right there as well. But again, it talks about Fire Service will design, schedule, and deliver WFDSS training for all users, and the bureaus will nominate personnel and attend training as needed. So we're ahead of the curve. We already had this on the calendar well before the authorities table even came out, and this is what we're talking about. So before I get into that, I don't think we have anybody online, so no big deal there, but I did want to talk. Just a little bit about the scoring table. So, scroll up. This was the score sheet that we put together last year, right? So what I do in part of my job is I review every WFDS decision that gets published. And one of the things that I started working on last year was a way for me to kind of score those. And I call this the 20-point must system, just like in boxing. You know, like in boxing, if you really kick butt in a boxing round, you win the round 10-8. If you just kind of kick butt, you win 10-9. Here in this scorecard, you either have it or you don't. If you have it, you get 1 point. If you don't have it, you get 0 points. And again, we talked about there is no requirement. This is strictly in Dylan Rader's perspective and experience, not only as a plans chief, but as a strategic operational planner, what makes a good WFDS decision. And these are some of the criteria that I came up with. For example, initial decision completed within 5 days of discovery, right? So again, I showed you guys what the policy is. There's no policy that says that you have to have it done by day 3 or day 5. But when I come in as a SOPL, if I look at their WFDS decision and it took them 10 days just to do a WFDS decision for a 50,000 acre fire, what does that mean? You know, do they have other priorities? Are there other things going on? Was this a back burner type thing? You know, so these are all things that you can look at to kind of make some of those determinations. A lot of the other ones are more cut and dry though. For example, jurisdictional approvers included in the rationale are collaborators. You know, if we have jurisdictional authorities, part of that planning area, make sure we highlight them. Some of the other stuff that I have in there are maps. WFDS Classic, the old WFDS, was very map-centric, map-driven. This is map-centric as well. The problem is that when you publish the decision, it's just a PDF document with 0 maps. There are no maps that auto-populate anywhere in that decision. So as a WFDS editor, all it takes is you going back, doing the screenshots of the maps that you want, putting them into your decision, and that's a pretty simple process, right? But it makes your decision much more useful. Not only do you have the text, but you have the maps, you have the spatial information that goes with it. So all of these things are elements in there, and basically you can see what I did. And I wanted to give Elko some credit here because you guys scored the highest on the Cottonwood Peak fire. So I'm just going to scroll over there so I don't confuse you with all the other stuff. But basically, in my opinion, these were all the WFDS decisions that got done in Nevada last year. The Cottonwood Peak fire hit 19 out of the 20 elements, the final Cottonwood Peak fire. Now, I have to caveat it with that. It wasn't the initial decision, right? Because that's another thing that we do in WFDS. The initial decision is typically C work, right? Just get something out the door, let's build on it. When you start publishing decisions 3, decisions 4, decisions 5, that's when you really want to start making your decisions better and when you want to start adding more information. So, for example, you know, here you guys can kind of see the continuum all the way from Gothic, you know, Gothic and Cat Canyon were a couple good decisions as well. Hot Canyon, you know, Hot Canyon was probably one of those decisions, just get it out the door, right? Just get it done, get it out the door. And in that case, probably met all the requirements, everything you needed to do. But that would be an example of if you publish another decision or a third decision or a fourth decision, there's some things you can work on, you know, to make them better, to build on. So that's, again, the kind of the point of the document. It's not to judge what people did last year. It's so that when you get into these fires and this type of scenario this year, Sarah McNeil can say, okay, I've got a few hours. I can sit down and I can do something on a decision. I'm going to go in and I'm going to put some maps into this decision because when we published it, we didn't include any maps, you know, things like that. Those are things that you can do to continually improve your decisions and make your WFDS decisions better. And that's the point of having this. It's not to judge or it's not to, you know, I think Toomey phrased it well in Carson. He goes, when I started doing this, he goes, it all kind of became a competition, became the districts. And if that's what it becomes, great. But I wanted to have a tool that people could reference back to say, if I have the time to go in and invest some time into a WFDS decision, here's what I can do to make it better. So that's all that is. And that's in there, available for you guys to look at as well. Again, all of the information that I'm talking to is in this link tree. So again, a lot of the information on the top here are just maps and links. As you get down into WFDS, this is how to actually get into WFDS. This is how to get into FAMA. This is how to get the fire modeling request form. All that information is right here. To get into the WFDS training portion, the WFDS guide, all of that information is down through here. So again, if you missed the RDNA refresher, the recording is here. Hopefully by the end of the week, I'll be able to process all of these trainings and this training, along with the two that I did last week in Carson and Vegas. I'll process the videos, post the videos to YouTube, and then the videos will live right here. So anybody that missed it, all they have to do is go into this link tree and everything lives right there, and they can go through the WFDS training as they need to. So any questions on any of the stuff that I just talked about? Specifically the authorities table, anything there? No? Okay, let's get right into it then. Okay, so with WFDS, and I'm gonna go back to the agenda. So this is the agenda that's attached to the calendar invite. Again, we're abbreviating all four of these parts into our 3-hour window this afternoon. So we're not going to cover any of the Spatial Fire Planning Service information, and we're not going to cover any of the additional ISAP or story map information. Within the agenda, though, there's a couple of things. One, this is the information on how to request the WFDS either production or WFDS training through FAMOF. So I think everybody's already done that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that. The other thing that I'm highlighting in the agenda is that if folks are not able to sit through or go through the full training, one thing you can do to make sure you're set up for success for the fire season is log into both WFDS production and WFDS training and make sure that your profiles are set up to this information right here. And we're going to go ahead and do that right now. So if you're logged in, feel free. That was kind of the point of the training, log into WFDS. Everybody should have access into this decision that we're going to be using. And this is the 2025 NV EKD Castle Ridge Training Fire. So we're going to use the exact same training decision we used last year because I want to build upon that concept of whether it's a periodic assessment or the next evolution of your WFDS decision. All we're doing is building upon work that's already been completed and is already in the system. So the very first thing is when you do log into WFDS, be very patient with the left-hand side of the screen, okay? They have been experiencing what they're calling map latency, and it's basically a very slow loading map. So when you get into WFDS, if it takes a long time to load your map, just be patient with it, but it will load after a while. What I want to highlight is if you click on the little person up here in the upper right-hand corner and click on View Profile, same thing, again, we were talking about on the previous screen. The unit, do not worry about the unit. You'll get really frustrated because you'll spend a bunch of time setting the unit. You'll log out of WFDS, you'll log back in, and it's right back to no unit. That's a known bug. They haven't been able to fix it in a year. So don't worry about the unit. The unit's not a big deal. The other thing I need to say before we get too far in is I'm going to be focusing just on EDU side. Anything that we do on EDU, you need to log in to training and do it on the production side as well. So like profile information, all that, you have to do it on both platforms. Both platforms are independent of each other. We're only going to use the EDU platform for training, this time of year. And then the rest of the time you get into WFDS, it's always going to be on the production side. But you need to do this exact same thing on both sides. The other thing with the FAMOF with WFDS is you need to log in at least once a year. If you don't log in with it at least once a year, you lose access. If you lose access, you can either go back in through FAMOF and request access again, or you can shoot me an email. I can go into your profile, edit your profile to give you access again. But you do need to maintain that yearly login just to maintain access into both platforms as well. So back to the profile. Again, I talked about the no unit. You do want to make sure that your geographic area is set to Great Basin. And if you go places on fires and you're working in another geographic area, know that that's how you can change your geographic area. If you're in Northern Rockies, working in Northern Rockies on a fire, you can go into WFDS, change your geographic area over to Northern Rockies so that it shows that you're in Northern Rockies during that time. I tend not to change mine around too much unless I'm officially involved in a WFDS decision. But if you were officially involved in a WFDS decision, you would want that information to show up in your information as well. Make sure you have a primary email address. I include a secondary email. I don't think WFDS uses the secondary email accounts at all yet. You can check off all of these notification boxes, but you're not going to get any notifications yet. But again, if you wanted to check them off, you can. The primary phone number, again, I preached this last year, but make sure that's your cell phone number. If somebody's trying to get a hold, if somebody's logging into WFDS and trying to get a hold of you, they need to get a hold of you. So don't use the front desk number, don't use a dispatch number, don't use a number that just rings endlessly. Put your cell phone number in there, because if somebody needs to get a hold of you, that's what they're going to be looking at, is that cell phone number right there. The big thing is the approver. So I'm going to uncheck this. And the only reason I check it off is because in training, I want to be able to show what that looks like. But in order to be an approver on production, when you check that, you are certifying that you meet your agency's policy to act as an agency administrator. So you can read that whole thing, but this is the only certification. There is no tie back to IQCS. There's no tie back to your red card. This is the only certification that allows WFDS to see you as an approver. So if you do meet the requirements of your agency to be an agency administrator, or what we formerly called an agency administrator, go ahead and hit agree. Make sure that you're checked off there, because that's the only way we're going to be able to add you into a decision as an approver. If you're not checked off as an approver in your profile, we won't be able to add you in as an approver. So make sure you got that in there. You're going to see some other things. I have GAE. You won't have that tab, so don't worry about that. Always hit save across the bottom. Let the blue spinny wheel do what the blue spinny wheel does once it's gone. The other thing you can look at while you're here is system preferences as well. I would highlight incidents. I like starting with the map. If you are operating in a place with poor internet, you may want to set that to go to my home, to where it doesn't load the map up. Because what I do with WFDS is I load up WFDS, then I turn around, I walk away, give it about 10 minutes, and then come back, and by then it's usually loaded up, ready to go. If you just try to log into WFDS and go right off the bat, it takes a few minutes for that map latency to load up. So keep that in mind. You can also set default map-based maps. Anything you can do on any of those AGUL products, you can do from this screen right here. So any questions on that? This is a relatively new, if you click on reports, and this isn't really going to work really well in training, because it's going to be looking for instances that are in training. But if you wanted to pull a past WFDS decision, this is how you would do it. And like I said, right now we're in training, so it's only going to query whatever training decisions were done. So you won't be able to pull up a decision, but you can pull decisions that were created in WFDS Classic. I'm talking old WFDS. Those decisions are now available as a PDF. There's a lot of information, like all the analysis that goes with it. You can download that as a zip file. So any of the analysis that was with old decisions that was actually accepted in the analysis tab by a fire behavior analysis, you can download that in WFDS as well.
And throw it into AGUL.
No,
Not as it, not.
no, it comes across as a KML file.
KMI, well, you can break that. Okay,
Well, yeah, it goes,
she can.
yeah. Yeah. With about 5 or 6 steps. Depending on what you're looking at. So anyway, that's there. I'm not going to flash back and forth to it, but in that link tree, there's a shared FireNet directory in there. I have all of the old WFDS decisions archived in there as well, along with the KML file. So if you find it easier to use this report, you can. From my point of view, I like loading up the KML file, shows me where on the map. Then all I have to do is go in the directory, find the name, and I can download that decision out of that shared directory as well. So you got a couple different avenues to get to WFDS Classic.
You've done everything in the state? Is that what you did?
Yeah.
All in the state?
Yeah, they've been up there for over a year now. So all that's in there, and that is available as well. And the reason I bring that up is because nobody creates a new WFDS decision. Every decision I've done, we were copying decisions, right? And as a SOPL, if I go to a unit and they ask me to do a WFDS decision, the very first thing I do is I go into their past WFDS archives and I find the nearest decision that they've done, both in, miles away and how long ago it was. And that's the decision that I pull out, and that's what I start crafting their new decision with. So WFDS is one of those things where you don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel unless you really want to. But if you want to, you definitely can. So the other thing that I wanted to highlight here is like when I go to my home, this is what my home looks like. If I go to incidents, it loads up the incidents page. A WFDS pro tip is that whenever you're working on an incident, and I'll show you how to do this when we get in the incident itself, is add it to your watch list, my incident watch list, you'll see right down here. And we do that by clicking on the decision. And this is where you want to be patient. Especially when you're running a Teams meeting. And while it's loading, I can highlight. So see this little window, see the eye right here? When a spinning wheel of death is done, I can click or unclick on that eye, and that's what adds that incident to my watch list. So just keep that in mind. If you have a bunch of incidents that you're working on, adding them to your watch list is the easiest thing to do, because then you don't have to worry about loading the map up, right? And this is the other issue that we're seeing with the map latency, even after that spinning wheel of death gets done. So another tip is just use these tabs and watch what I do. So this is a white map. Hopefully it works. If I click on the relative risk tab, let that flash over. And flash over. Sometimes it kind of resets. That's like a refresh button, more or less. And what it does is it goes out and it sends a signal to the server and asks the server to bring the information back. But this is what we're talking about with the map latency. So while that is loading, I'm going to show this. The collaborators list. This is another important part of the WFDS decision. And this is, as it's loading up, hopefully it loads the map up here. The point of contact is the old owner, right? So remember in WFDS Classic, we had the owner. The owner was the only person that could load up, that could load additional people into the WFDS decision. Here, that is now called the point of contact. And I've already made Sarah the point of contact for this decision. Yeah, this is really, really lagging. So let me be patient. I can't do anything. The other thing that I find too is internet signal. Depending on, so yeah, we should be doing pretty good. But if you have, that's not really good. Let me do something real quick. Switch over. Take a 5-minute break. If you guys want to go to the bathroom, give me a chance to get this reset, and then we'll come back in and hopefully everything's working after I get on the new signal. Okay? Take a 5-minute break. Okay. There you go.
What's that? Famous? Nope, so I'm famous.
Matt Murphy.
No, it's Brady. I worry, I don't know if you want to maybe turn the video off. That'll help you get some light back in it.
No, I think it's, we'll see if it loads up here.
A production? You're using all the production up?
Oh, that's funny.
Sarah. I think it's working on my iPad. I'm used to it, but I know,
I
I
wouldn't,
used to have the light
I
version
wouldn't
of
try it,
this.
yeah.
See, mine would, no. See?
Oh, yeah, it's just snowing. It's just me just snowing.
It's awful.
Low fire is ridiculous. Snow everywhere.
Okay, so it looks like it was just Wi-Fi. Your production Wi-Fi real slow.
Okay.
This is my MiFi. That's getting early.
There took all the.
It's not-
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
I mean, is your guys' network that slow?
Don't we have network right there you can plug into?
Yeah.
You're not doing that?
No.
You're just using Wi-Fi?
Mhm. I'm on now. It's working good now.
Oh, there goes.
Yeah. No, it wouldn't read the docking station for whatever
Oh, really?
reason, so, yeah. It reads it just, I mean, it's because I got one of these computers that's got the 2 ports,
Oh, yeah.
and it's just got the one, right? So,
Not much in the way.
no, we're good now. We're back and running.
You're in, Mike? Shit, I'm going fishing, man. You got this? Got it. I'm going fishing. Mike's got it. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Okay,
So Sarah, that thing lasted an hour. How long will your computer last? Wow.
Not very long.
I put mine in, I thought it was starting.
Was it?
Yeah, I was switching to that.
Oh,
Went something else.
did it take off though? How many watts is it pushing out? Oh, yeah, good. Mine has a hard time sometimes. Yeah, mine has a hard time. Like, sometimes I'll get 3 watts and then run it a couple times and it'll be like 30.
I think I got like. Maybe 80. When I started here.
And then it's done. You have to switch it a little button.
I'm with my father. Oh, your actual. Okay. Top base. Oh.
Okay, yeah. Oh, it's my computer.
It's got a big old giant 55-inch screen on it. I mean, I can see that better than that.
okay, folks are starting to filter in or whatever. I was able to switch it over, so the map is loading up good now. And what I'd like you guys to, I know it's kind of hit or miss with the signal or who's in or who's out, is what I've been doing that seems to be pretty successful is just telling people, spend about 5 or 10 minutes just going through the map, right? I mean, just take a look at all of the different layers that are available. One of the things is when you first load the map, you'll see that there's a lot going on in there. I go in, if I wanted to uncheck all of this, so that initial planning area, instant perimeter, strategic assessment, all that, and then just get it to where you have the planning area. And maybe some parameters here, simplify your view a little bit, right? So we're opening it up now. And just like we would do on a real fire, first thing you do is you look at the map, right? And you start identifying what are our values of risk? What are we worried about looking at? So WFDSS is again spatially driven. And what I'd like you guys to do is everybody should be able to log into this decision now. Sarah's got you all set up as collaborators within the decision. So if you're on a computer and you want to work along, you can log into this decision, this 2025 NV WFDSS Castle Ridge Training Fire. And you can just start working along. And what we're going to be looking at is the map and the planning area to start with. And then we're just going to be working through the tabs all the way across the top here. And I'm going to spend maybe the next hour, up until probably 3 o'clock or so, 3:15, maybe just kind of going through each of those tabs. And you guys can work along with me if you want to. And then what we're going to do is we're going to break off, and you guys are going to, just like it's fire and you having to do a WFDSS decision. Sarah's going to be your WFDSS author, and you guys are all going to work through the decision from left to right, make sure everything's ready to go. And then we're going to approve the decision right before 4 o'clock. So that's kind of my goal anyway, is to give you guys some time where you can actually kind of be working through the process, talk about what you guys do locally, what that process looks like, and then just give you guys the opportunity to kind of work through the decision and update whatever you want to do on the decision. Make sense? Sarah, sound like a plan? Yeah? Yeah. All right, so first thing while you're looking at in the map too is the planning area. The planning area is important because the planning area not only does it give the incident commander their theater, but it also gives you as an agency administrator or anybody else that's looking at the WFDSS decision. That's what gives us our initial spatial inventory that tells us what the values at risk are, right? So I don't know. I mean, this is where I ask you guys to kind of provide some feedback. Matt, what are some things that you're looking at in the planning area, and what are some of the criteria you guys are looking at when you draw your planning area?
I mean, so we're looking at, from drawing a planning area, we're looking at, I'm looking at what's the weather going to be. I'm familiar with this piece of ground. I'm familiar with most pieces of ground when we have fires out in Elko District. I know probably where that fire is going to try to go and where opportunities are for success. No, and I know that piece of ground, knowing we've only got one road to go down that mountain range. That's it. That's your only containment option right now, and hold it there. And it's actually definable and easy for a suppression resource to know if it's gotten outside of that road. So that's what I'm doing as I start looking at it, knowing that this thing's going to want to move like every other fire in that piece of ground, to the north and to the east. If we can't hold it there, then we're looking very, very big on a planning boundary. And if we can pull up the pod layers or whatever, or the containment line layers, and that can help define that. And start looking at mainly roads, some roads or ridges or rivers that folks can easily understand what a planning boundary would be on the ground.
Yeah, Matt, thank you for leading into that. That's one of the things I was going to talk about is the pods. So you guys kind of see, I mean, one of the nice things with these AGOL products is the maps and just the tools. So this is a swipe tool that I like to use. What that does is basically you pick whatever one layer you want on the swipe bar, and then you can swipe down. And the reason I bring this one in is because Matt brought up the pods. So a couple years ago, we underwent an effort with the Forest Service to highlight what we're calling our pod boundaries, or potential operational delineations, if you want the definition of them. And Forest Service has pods and BLM has pods across Nevada. We're one of the few states that actually have pods all the way across, and it's going to take a little while every time we load it up, every time I zoom in and out. But the reason I wanted to bring that up is because with this swipe tool, with these pods, we set up our pod boundaries to be, in effect, pre-planned planning areas, right? I mean, we decided that if we have a fire within this area, this pod boundary is probably going to represent this planning area boundary. So these are more or less pre-planned planning area boundaries that were drawn by Forest Service, BLM, SMEs, sitting around a room together saying that if a fire happened here, these are your likely containment opportunities, right? And there may be few, there may be many, depending on where you're at. But with these pod boundaries, what these allow us to do is, as a fire planner, if I know that the pod boundaries are your initial planning area boundaries, and then, for example, in this case here for the Castle Ridge, You know, I may initially make a planning area too big, you know, so I may look at drawing, you know, like, just like you guys did here, but also including this pod here. But it allows me to focus down, right? It allows me to change from the Owyhee Desert to focus in on this geographic extent, and then really start focusing in on, once I know what my planning area is, then I can start identifying values at risk and everything else that I need to know. So I did want to highlight that just a little bit, because we did put some work into those pod boundaries. And I think there's a lot of utility in using them, as you guys have been doing. Have we been using them for these pre-planned planning areas? That's hard for me to say sometimes. But anyway, that's one of the tools that's available to you. And those tools, I mean, all of those layers are available right here in the map as well. So within that operational fire planning layer. So the other thing too is, I'm not gonna demonstrate it because it's gonna take a lot of time. The drawing tool is very similar to what was in WFDSS Classic as well. So Sarah, I think it was you guys, right? I mean, you highlighted the fact that if you just spatially copy the extent of the pod boundary, we clip those in most cases right to roads, right? So if you're using that as your planning area boundary, typically you want a little bit of buffer off of that road area. So if you still want to incorporate those buffers into your planning area boundary, you would just hand draw, right? You would just overlay the pod boundary and then just use the drawing tool and hand draw your polygon around that to give you whatever road buffer you wanted. And it still accomplishes the same thing, more or less. It's not exact. I mean, Steve Levitt, you know, or you're a GIS specialist, so I guess I can tease you. You know, you guys may not have the precise numbers, but it's going to be pretty close, you know, when it comes down to hand drawing. The other thing too, you can do within this, maybe I can try this. I'm not even going to try it just because I don't trust the map. You can actually copy a feature. So if I wanted to copy the pod boundary and copy that as the shape for the planning area boundary, you can do that within WFDSS as well. It's just a couple of keystrokes here. But yeah, you can copy one feature and paste it into another feature too. But for the purpose of the planning area boundaries, outside of just looking at the pod boundaries, I would say use that hand drawing tool, just to make sure that you don't clip something you want to clip and you buffer everything that you want to leave enough buffer on. Does that make sense? Because we've had WFDSS decisions where somebody decided to do a burnout, right? And it didn't cross the plan. I mean, it didn't go anywhere they didn't want it to go. They burned out on the road, but we drew the planning area so tight to the road that any little, you know, GIS extending of the perimeter past the planning area causes it to say that you're outside the planning area boundary. So you just want to be careful with that. The analysis tab, and again, I'm scooting. I mean, I could spend 45 minutes just talking about the map. So my expectation is that if you guys want to spend more time looking at the map right now, you can, but I'm going to continue to go through. One of the other tools that I just highlighted there is this arrow tool. The majority of time when you're in WFDSS, you're going to be working in the map. That's why the map is right here. But if you're not working in the map and you want to get rid of most of the map view, you can click that arrow button, and then that opens up all these tabs over here, which is important because when you are working in the tabs, you can get tabs that are hidden to the right of this, that are in there that you don't know about unless you open that up. So make sure that you open up that map. Make sure that you get in here. If you want to request an analysis, again, my recommendation is to request one as soon as possible using the risk request form that I have on the link tree. But do that as soon as you decide you're going to do a decision. That way it queues up the request for the people that are working in risk. And hopefully, if it's going to take you a few hours to do a decision, like if it's 10 o'clock in the morning and you have to have a decision done by 1800 because that's when your in briefing is, it gives them time to do the FS Pro run, but it also gives you time to look at the FS Pro and actually use that in your decision support and overlay your planning area. And for example, you know, does our planning area boundary match up with what the FS Pro is telling us? You know, if it doesn't, you know, maybe that's an opportunity to adjust your planning area boundary. There's certain things you can look at or that you want to look at that you can be looking at in that time frame. But for the most part, the analysis tab, you can click on request analysis. And the reason I brought all that up, don't click on request analysis in here. If you click on request analysis in here, the queue doesn't go anywhere. It just gets loaded up in WFDS, and then an F-band has to log in and actually see it. So if you request analysis in WFDS, you won't get any kind of fire behavior request, any kind of modeling done. If you want analysis done, actually use that risk request form that I included in the link tree, and it is also going to be linked in the coordinating group panel. That's the best way to do it. The relative risk. No changes from the relative risk that we had last year, so it still models the PMS 236 Part B. Again, all of these items are also in the guide, and I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking to the guide right now before I forget. So this is the guide. That's also a PDF document that's available in the link tree. This is the checklist that I talked about as far as those 20 elements that I put into my scorecard. So all 20 of those elements are right here. They also include links to whatever the source document is, or if it's a map, whatever it is right there. But then we get into the standard guide, and this is the same guide that we've been using, that I've been using for a lot of years now. It is set up for WFDS Next Generation, and that it has the new kind of buttons that are so forth in there, like when you get down to, this is all fire modeling stuff. But as you can see here, that as you get through the risk analysis, this guide, I actually copied and pasted all the information that was in the old WFDS help guide, because all this information was in that old WFDS help guide. So these are the criteria that go into that analysis. So if they're like a low, moderate, a high, or a few, not so few, many, whatever those definitions are, this will help you to decide what those definitions mean, what those criteria look like, and what buttons should be selected as you're going through and talking that out. Because really what that is that's one person sitting down trying to identify everything in their risk analysis that they think is included on that fire. But then when it comes time to approve the decision as an agency administrator, if you don't think that that is complete or that's lacking information, that's up to you to make sure that it gets included in there before you approve the decision as well. So all of that information is in the guide. The guide is set up to be a copy and paste. So if you just want to copy out the values and paste that in, you can copy and paste it into your WFDS decision. And again, I give people this information not as a way to cheat the WFDS process, but as a way to save time, because when you're doing WFDS decisions, typically you have multiple decisions that you're doing, and time is of the essence, right? You have very limited time to get things done. So this will save time. May not give you the best product, but it will give you a product that you can get done quickly. That's probably the best way to say it.
What that score on the bill and rating is.
If you follow my guide, I would probably get a 15 out of 20.
12 out of 10.
At least 12. No, at least a 12. The other thing too that I really want to highlight, especially if you have multiple editors, and this is important. So, because a lot of times, if you may be in a room similar to this, right, with about this many people working through decisions and actually typing in the decisions. It's important that you only have one editor in each tab. So when I say one editor per tab, that means that if Sarah was working in here, I would tell Sarah, hey, I'm in relative risk. Don't do anything in relative risk right now. That tells Sarah she can either work in strategy, any of these other tabs. Just don't work in the tab that I'm working in. And the reason why is because you can, but what happens is there's a single editor that comes through, and I have to uncheck this, right? So I have to slide that over saying that it is not ready for publication. That allows me to type into it. Multiple people can be typing into it at the same time, right? And then if multiple people unslide this at the same time, and there's multiple edits being pushed up at the same time, it doesn't take it well. WFDS doesn't react well to that. So if you've got multiple editors working on a single decision, just stay in tabs. This is my tab, this is your tab, this is your tab. If I'm done with my tab, I say, okay, I'm done with my tab. I am back to ready for publication, and then you can get out of it, and then somebody else can work on it. Okay?
If she's in relative risk and I jump into strategy and I get done with my portion first, Can I do ready for publication and strategy before she's ready for publication? And
Yes,
didn't we have an issue with that last year?
you were probably both in the same tab.
I'm missing something, I can't remember.
Yeah, you were both in the same tab. I
Yeah,
guarantee
really?
it.
Okay.
Yep. I'm not guaranteeing it, but 99% sure that's
Oh,
probably
okay.
what it was, yeah. So yeah, you're gonna go through here. The other thing with this is, so this is just, and I'm gonna slide this over again. So anytime you want to do any kind of editing, you have to tell the server that you're pulling back the editing version, and that's what this is right now. And then this is just an advanced editor, just like anything else. So if you want to add a table into there, you can insert a table. If you want to create a bulleted list, you can. If you want to create a numbered list, you can. Last year, we couldn't do bulleted lists in WFDS. This year we can. Bulleted lists are okay again in WFDS. So if you want to format this, you can use all of this to format it. Any maps that you want to attach into your WFDS decision, again, Matt was talking about control locations up there. We're talking about Scraper Springs Road. This is a map. All you have to do is you can either export the map as a JPEG and then bring the JPEG into your WFDS decision, or you can just do a screen share, any kind of, copy paste, screen capture, anything like that. You can do a copy paste of any map, paste it into your WFDS decision. And the only thing you really want to kind of pay attention to is here you can wrap text, here you can tell it where it's centered. Here you can resize it. So if it's a smaller image that you don't want to take up your whole decision, you probably want to make it somewhat of a percentage of the original size. But if it's a map, you want to keep it that original size because you don't want to screw up the resolution. It just looks funny. It makes it look bad if you change the resolution too much of the map. But that's basically how WFDS is scalable, right? So where old WFDS would automatically, you could bring all those maps in, or you could tell WFDS that you wanted this map as part of your decision. New WFDS, you can't do that. But with new WFDS, adding maps is as simple as copying and pasting. So you can add anything that you can copy and paste from, you can put into your WFDS decision. As long as you can make it a screenshot, a JPEG, you can put it into your WFDS decision. So whether it's a weather report, whether it's a map, whether it's fire behavior, whether it's pictures, whether it's camera images, all that stuff that we can put into a WFDS decision, you can put in this way. Any questions there? When you are editing, again, you'll want to uncheck ready for publication and hit save, and then you can go back and do that. Some of the other items that are in here, oh, you have them saved. So here, I need to hit save, and then it does. The strategic assessment and the strategic course of action. Very similar to what we did last year. You can still use incident objectives, incident requirements, all of those same concepts can be copied and pasted into a strategic course of action here in your decision. The strategic assessment is more along the lines of what we used to call a course of action. So think of what we used to put in that course of action statement. That is what now goes into the strategic assessment. And it can go into this strategic assessment tab right in here. Again, if there's additional tabs, like in this one, they bury the cost tab, right? So you could be, and this is where you're gonna spend a lot of your time in these two tabs in WFDS between the strategic assessment and the strategic course of action. If you don't realize it, you don't know that the cost tab is buried in there too. And again, the cost, you do have an estimated final fire cost, and you still have a narrative that you have to add in there. We no longer have the stratified cost index tool that was taken out of WFDS a couple years ago. But if you wanted to download a couple cost estimators, you can download those cost estimators down here. And this NWCG cost spreadsheet, that's the iSuite spreadsheet that they use to update the rates every year in the iSuite. So that gets updated sometime in this window. So just be mindful of that. That's probably due for an update. Firefighter safety. Before we get into firefighter safety, there's one very important thing that I kind of glossed over in the incident info. And the reason I glossed it over is because we already did it. But whenever you start a WFDS decision, or whenever you are going to do a new WFDS decision, if you redraw the planning area, always make sure that your next workflow is to come into spatial inventory and click on generate spatial inventory. And what that does is that updates your spatial inventory based off of your most recent planning area. If you don't update that, it's going to use the old spatial inventory. So whatever intersects it pulls in, however many miles of transmission lines, however many miles of roadless area.
Based on that square,
Yep, it's based off that planning area.
yeah, the original planning area, which is a square, whatever.
Well, it's originally a 5x5 square, but then it's whatever you draw. So that every spatial inventory from that point forward is based off of whatever you draw.
Yeah.
You just have to tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to tell them. So that's important because if you don't tell it to generate a new spatial inventory, you're gonna be looking at old numbers and they're not gonna be accurate. And what that looks like is, this is what the spatial inventory looks like right here. We can do it, should be pretty quick. We'll see it generates. And then when it's done, you'll have an entire table that you can download as either an Excel table, or maybe I'll come back to it and show it at some point, just so I'm not wasting time once it generates. But if you're in the decision, you'll be able to come back to it as well as at any point. So the reason why that is important though, is because when you click on this firefighter safety tab, all of the graphs that WFDSS generates for the firefighter safety tab are based off of the planning area. Okay, so it's not going to update these until you tell it to generate that spatial inventory. And then, you know, there's a lot better way to communicate. I think, you know, like this is suppression difficulty index. You know, when you look at suppression difficulty index on a pie graph, doesn't really tell me that much, but when you look at it on a map, it tells you a lot more, right? So be mindful of that. You know, they're trying their best to work in some of those RMA analytics, and you can work in any of those analytics. If you want to work in PCLs, snag hazards, ground evac time, severe, you know, that ground evac time would actually be a good graph to look at. Because right there, you can look at that planning area. You know, you can say across that planning area, the majority of our planning area is within that 4-hour window. So you don't have too many areas
Can you
outside.
do the snag hazard one? Oh, man, I'm
Yeah.
Curious if it shows any for like the Aspen. Oh, it probably does show something there for Aspen.
Yeah, it does pick up those aspen layers.
I think it would be that.
No. Juniper too. I mean, anything in juniper, anything that I think is, it's not land fire, it's land stepped, right? Isn't that the
Yeah.
other tool that they use?
Probably. I'm
Yeah.
curious what this picks up.
Yeah.
Aspen is riparian area, not actual
Right.
trees.
Right. Here's a good one to look at, like weather and smoke. Think, oh, okay, yeah, weather does come in, and now weather smoke works, you know, so. Whenever you see a tab like that, that just means that they set the tab up to, in the future, do something. If, you know, obviously, that's not doing anything for you right there. So if you wanted to pull the weather into your WFDSS decision now, you would go to your fire weather forecast site, grab their matrix, copy, paste it, put it into a WFDSS decision, call it good, right? You got all that information. Right?
It's not pulling weather?
Not into the decision. When you do an FS Pro run, then it's pulling weather out of FIMS, but it's not pulling anything into the decision.
Like it was like classic,
Right.
classic.
Which I think is good. I always thought that was a lame aspect of WFDSS, because by the time somebody read that fire weather forecast, it's already 3 days old, right? Yeah, so that's why I say in this decision, you know, there's a lot better products we can be putting in for weather. You know, they basically do their fire weather forecast now on a matrix. So that matrix would be a much better product to put in than the textual fire weather forecast used to be, right?
And off of our National Weather Service up here, that matrix is based on the indices on our card.
Mhm.
So we made it for 90 degrees, the certain RH 15 mile per hour winds. That's what they based it on.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's based off the numbers out of their model. It's not
Out of their model, but the thresholds are off of our
Yeah.
fire matrix card.
Right. The other tab that's in here is the organization and complexity assessment. And what that is part C and E of the 236. So part B is you highlight all the hazards and risks. Part C and E is you talk about what the organization complexity is and what type of staff you need to manage that complexity. So there's a few things here that happen. One is, again, the relative risk rating is brought in when that is published. All the information, again, you can copy and paste that from the guide, or you can actually go through and do the analysis based off of whatever you want the analysis to look like. All that can be done in here. If the complexity analysis rates out to where the majority of the items would rate out as complex, that's what opens up part D. So when your rating is I don't even know how many of them, but when it shows that you need a complex incident management team to manage that fire, that's what opens up part D of the form. And then that is the information where you justify why each section needs, why each section has to be a complex incident management team.
Is that your rationale?
Yes,
Is that your
same information that goes in the rationale.
Goes to the NIC to justify it, or is that
Yep.
followed up with anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
It goes into WFDS, and that's the thing is,
That's what Nick is
NVAC
reviewing?
wants you to
NVAC.
regurgitate it, but it goes into WFDS. It lives in WFDS.
Oh, but NMAC is still wanting us to regurgitate it.
Yes.
They're not following it out.
No. If you request a team and NMAC has that criteria set up where you have to justify, that's what they want to see. So as long as you've done it in WFDS, you just copy, paste it, put it on the NMAC form. Hopefully in the future, the people at NMAC understand that they can log into WFDS and read that, but until then, you're gonna see a lot of redundant processes.
And you have that in our template, part D?
Yeah.
Good language for that, John.
Absolutely. Language that I had to use on the Boise National Forest with the complex incident management team.
To justify yourself,
What's that?
to justify your team?
To justify the team that we had up there,
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm going to just highlight this real quick, and then you guys are gonna break into your groups and start working through the decision. And what I wanted to show here is in the decision rationale. So once you click on that, so first off, not everybody has the decision rationale tab. I think only editors and approvers can see this tab. So what that does is in the past, where we used to be able to type in a decision rationale and then an approver could go in and approve it. Now the approver has to type in their own decision rationale. So be mindful of that. Not everybody has access to this tab unless you were checked off as an approver. The other thing is just like, I'm going to highlight this and we'll go back to the tabs. So you can see published decisions. So right now we've had all of these decisions published so far. So we are on the 6th version. And then if you go down here to required decision elements, you can see that we've got the last 4 items done, but we still need to get a strategic course of action, strategic assessment, relative risk, analysis summary, planning area, spatial inventory, which I just need to go back and save that, and planning area. So all of those elements still need to be checked off before we can approve a decision. So over the next hour or so, I want you guys just to work in a group. Sarah can be your WFDS driver if you want Sarah to be your WFDS driver. If you want the screen, you need to come and we need to switch out or whatever here. Or if you want me just to have the decision up here, I can do the, or if you want to come sit here, you can do that. But just kind of work through that decision. Divvy out the workload, right? So if somebody wants to work on strategic course of action, they can have their computer and they can be working in strategic course of action. If somebody wants to be in relative risk, they can be in relative risk. If somebody wants to be doing the planning area, they can be doing the planning area. But basically, over the next hour, we need to make sure that we can check off all these boxes so that we can publish, so we can approve and publish our decision at about 3:45 or so. Is kind of what I'm shooting for, because we're going to wrap up with that and then we're done at 4 o'clock unless there's other questions. So I really want you guys to get in there, and this is the hands-on portion where Matt, Jared, if you guys kind of want to highlight what process you expect, to go through, and Craig, from your side, how the Wildland Fire Service can support that this summer. This is a good opportunity to kind of have those discussions and hash that out over the next half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it looks like.
You're gonna save the planning area and the planning area spatial inventory, so as we checked off.
Yep.
Those.
Yep. I'll get that analysis summary taken care of too. So if you guys can focus on relative risk down. Makes sense?
And we're saying the fire is when?
Just go with the scenario just in there. It's in July. It's July fire.
Okay.
July of 2025. Nobody needs to know about that.
No,
Right.
no, I mean, Glenn's gone. You're gone. I'm left to hold a shit sandwich.
We're from the service and we're ill.
That's what I meant.
Okay, so anything I can help you guys to facilitate that process, again, kind of thing that I talk about is from a fire planner side. I call this a WFDSS party, right? Whenever you come to a WFDSS party, bring your computer and you bring your own internet to a WFDSS party. So be thinking about that too, because and then you may laugh at it, but it's a real thing. If I'm driving through Burns, Oregon, and I have to stop at Burns, Oregon and do a WFDSS decision for 3 days, I'm reliant on having my own technology, everything I need to do it from a hotel room, basically. So be thinking about that when it comes to these WFDSS, how we complete WFDSS decisions and how we do them. That's case by case. You guys had enough fires last year where you kind of went through the evolution of having a standalone one fire. That's all you got to worry about, to having multiple fires, to having multiple fires with a team fire. So you guys went through a lot of different scenarios last year, and hopefully you learned some different things last year that you can put into your practices this year. Now's the time to employ it. So Craig, you ready to approve that decision?
Gotta get my laptop.
I know.
Put the fire out.
Yeah.
Approved. Okay. You wanna go up there and have that on there or no? Yeah.
What? You got this?
And it can be as simple as all I have to do is unplug this wire too. And if you could move right up here, you could have the projector.
It's gonna be like real life, so they got a little bit series going on the screen too.
Oh, we didn't
So
speak.
bad, you see all that flip. Things thing.
Definitely World Series.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Excited about this, Mike? Now you know all the hard work we're doing, how to just put the fire out. Yeah. Should have caught it, that's what we're saying.
Oh, Jack would have caught it.
And we're just talking crap like the whole time. Mike would have just copied this damn thing, we would have to do this decision.
Down like 30%.
Mike, that's. Come up here and put yours on the screen. Down to 30%. On that.
Maybe more.
That's one here.
And we've got Mike
All you
as
need is that one right there.
an editor, right?
Yeah, I'm in there.
So is Mike doing our WFDSS decisions now?
I'm gonna help Mike get through some stuff here. So we need to get done, we need to go from relative risk over, right?
Yes.
All right,
This is
Mike,
easy, it's already. okay.
what's this
I
guy?
got the guide.
This is where we go, right here. Have you guys seen, you guys have our guides, the guide that we use? Have you seen it?
It's in the tree, it's in the link.
It is in the tree.
Everything is like training.
So,
I learned from my predecessors. They gave you guys a
Yep.
thumb drive at the last training. I thought, man,
so July, right? Middle of fire season?
Yeah.
Right? A lot of fire season still ahead of us. Almost early fire season, to be honest, that's not gonna work. Go to the guide. Go to the
The guide for the.
template. I'm not sure if it says in that link tree. What's it say?
It's under the WFDSS, it is.
It is under the WFDSS.
Oh, the guide, there.
Okay, so go back to it.
Can't read.
Go down. Are you in? No, you're in protect, but you're in values.
I'm like,
Social economic concerns.
Just go through and delete the decision. Like, is there nothing in the decision?
There's nothing in these tabs. There you go.
Put mine in the middle, no,
Barriers are getting there.
relative risk.
Relative risk, go down.
Control it. Right, or
Time of season. All right, so peak burning conditions, activities expected to increase over coming days and weeks. Live net fuel moisture is higher than seasonal averages at this point, but fine fuel loading.
oh, here we go, middle.
Yeah, I think. Go back, go down, sorry, let's see what's down below that. Nope, go up. So I would grab that,
This guy right here.
yep.
Oh.
Copy. Let's go into the WFDSS decision, paste that. Let's start editing. So expected increase over the coming weeks, live and dead fuel moistures are higher than seasonal averages at this point. Let's say lower than seasonal averages. We're doing 2025. Fuel loading 100 to 300% of average due to spring precipitation. I think that's probably fine. And then boom, barriers to fire spread. So the way I look at this is I'm familiar with that piece of ground out there. That country has like very little barriers to fire spread. We got a couple roads. We don't have giant rocky ridge lines like we might have in maybe in the Rubies or in other mountain ranges in the west, where you have giant prominent ridge lines that are just rocked out and gonna hold a fire, or big wet marshes that were gonna hold a fire. We rarely have, if I ever say we have a lot of fire barrier.
Yeah.
I rarely ever say we do. So I think I would take that top piece. Few, if any, ridges, rock, yep. Copy that. Barriers of fire spread include roads. I would not highlight that yet. I would just go over to go click right there. Yeah, include roads along the planning area boundary. And within the Midas mining district. That's about it. There's not a lot out there. Get rid of the rest of it. I capitalize Midas
Safety tab view.
district.
New as of last year.
Okay.
It's not the guide, is it?
Seasonal severity. It's July. And
You know,
last year's July, I'd say very high to extreme. I mean, and what things I would look at for seasonal severity is actually go back. You can click on that question mark right there, and it can give you an idea of what it's asking for in that. Fire danger indices, ERCs, drought status, live and dead fuel moistures. In July, our live fuel moistures were like terrible. Like beyond terrible. They were about as low as August was probably the most we've ever seen, but we were getting there. And just knowing that we have all those fires came with lightning and they all burned through the night and they didn't slow down, and like very, very resistant to retardant, resistant to everything that we were throwing at them. That's why I would leave it very high to extreme. We're seeing no natural opportunity for this fire to stop burning.
It's not a retardant issue.
Well, it was a retardant issue, but it was everything issue. Our bulldozers starting fires too. And then putting in line.
Water down, we're gonna have water down retardant use with you.
No, we're gonna fix that. We just got to tell Kristen to fix it. Yeah, we probably, I mean, I don't know if it would have, if we didn't have water down retardant, I don't know if it would have held up there. It might have, but I doubt it. Did we answer everything we need to answer on that one? When we cut and paste into,
Barriers?
oh yeah, for barriers. Yeah, seasonal severity, so very high to extreme. So back to the guide then. Time of year steadily dropping fuel moistures. Yeah, that looks good. The presence of topographic features and historic concurrent fire activity results in moderate assessment of verging on high. Yeah, verify weather warnings are in effect with thunderstorms, lightning, gusty winds that could profoundly influence fire behavior. I mean, this is a scenario, so we could say sure. Yeah, let's grab that language and start working on it. Verging on high to extreme, that's what I would do. Result in high, I would say result in very high assessment verging on extreme. So go back to moderate and change that to very high. And then I think we could even put in here that fire behavior remains erratic and behavior remains erratic and extreme. Even through evening hours. And prolonged burn periods experienced for multiple days. I do have their steadily dropping fuel moistures, but we could say near historic low fuel moistures up above.
There's specific breaks they look at, with moisture.
Yeah, I mean, anything below 150% in our live fuel moisture, you see sagebrush carrying fire. But above that, sagebrush may not carry the fire, it'll still burn a little bit, but you still have stalks left. After 150, you can see fire getting carried by sagebrush. 125, you're starting to see nothing left. It definitely is consuming all the sagebrush.
If we have that information, which we typically.
We probably did, yeah.
Is it worth putting something like that in there to show them essentially how dry we are?
Yeah, we can make that up right now, right? What we are,
Well, right now. Because like I
120%,
said, we were,
110%, 15% or something like that, you can put right there in the parentheses. Yeah,
because last July, weren't we right around 100%?
I think later in the year, we probably got to around 100%, but I mean, I'm sure for this exercise, you could put that.
Still bad.
Yeah, not good.
You could put the graphs of the fuel moistures also in there if you want to.
Yeah, unfortunately, our fuel moisture sites aren't really that close to up there. Our nearest one's Palisade, which it's a ways away, but
It's within 150 miles, it's representative, man.
yeah, I don't know about that. Well, I guess I'm thinking of Jake's.
Better than nothing, yes. Better than nothing.
Yeah.
And if you're saying the fuel moistures are historic, though, how do you know? Not, like, it's you.
Hazards.
Hazards, click on the question mark. It's spread. All right, let's go to the guide. Set up as an approver yet? In your profile, I want to check that. Hazards, areas.
Check them both.
Yeah, and production, we had to be signed off the approval.
Yeah, production.
You don't want to get too, it's broad.
Hazard variance areas connected to large fire growth, yes, we know that. These fires are highly receptive, encouraging large fire growth and with active fire behavior, poor nighttime humidity recovery create around about burning conditions. Fuel moistures are consistently dropping throughout the district. Correct. That's, it's gonna be high. Let's look at the tab for that. Trim rate spreader possible, fire has grown. I don't know how big this fire is in this one, I can't remember. But yeah, I grabbed that. Cause he's gonna be. Our lift is go to.
Everybody needs
We're
one.
gonna be fishing, Sarah. Mike's gonna be working. Yeah, we'll just say the fire's 20,000 acres plus. I don't remember off this one. We'll just call it right now. During the first burn period. Fuels evaluation, elevation and topography varied throughout the area, creating high resistance to control, very few natural barriers for containment. Correct?
Yes.
Yes. Um. Yeah, we'll tweak this, because we don't have any modeling, I don't think. Don't have modeling done.
No.
Okay. Okay, so I think we'll not talk about the modeling. I just say anticipate, actually, I would maybe state like. Observe fire behavior for the last several operational shifts. For excessive.
Should be working.
Bill, if you have screenshots of where I dump them, is in these text boxes.
You can, yeah,
Observe fire behavior.
anywhere in the decision. So if it makes sense to put in here,
Like we have the fuels area model.
Over the last.
Yep.
Several operational shifts.
Barriers.
Was extreme. With prolonged. With prolonged burn periods. And a period. Low fine fuel moisture, or low live fuel moistures. It's present with. Above average fine fuel loading. Has increased fire, has increased fire growth potential. Within the area. And then I think we're simply. Actually, you know what? Let's get rid of actually. Oh, my eyes are blurry. Yeah, I would just take that out. That piece right there. Take it down. That out. And the next little bit out until you get to the steep terrain. And then steep terrain, potential for rolling rocks and debris are also a concern. Fire suppression success. It's coupled by. This is an adjective game.
You're pretty good at this game.
Huh?
You're pretty good at this game.
It's coupled by.
The words that come out of that movie.
The words that come out of my, nobody understands the words that come out of my mouth. When you say something here about very rough terrain and field conditions. First questions, let's couple by, I don't want to say rough terrain, just, yeah, steep terrain.
Accessibility.
Yeah, coupled by limited accessibility. There we go, Spence, there we go. Hamper fires, hamper fire suppression efforts. Yep, fire suppression efforts, and then we should probably say predicted weather is similar to the conditions that have allowed for large fire growth.
Yeah.
So large fire growth observed.
Limited resources.
You know, Craig's got all kinds of, we're Wildland Fire Service now. We got all kinds of resources. So hot, make that a high. That'll work.
Minimum
Is
coupled by limited,
professional success.
coupled by limited.
Oh, well, wrong spot, or what are you talking about?
Limited.
There we go.
Now we know the fire service is in there.
We got, is there a co-pilot in this? We got co-pilot with this?
Oh, yeah, no, you can use Copilot though. Brad Matthews used Copilot last year to type up 2 decision rationales.
Oh, yeah, oh, for decision rationales, but for,
They're good decision.
we should have, why isn't there co-pilot, little button on the side and say, boom, co-pilot this?
Yeah, where's AI? Write me a plan.
Be careful what you ask for, Matt.
We want to co-pilot this. Turn this, I want all of this into GIFs, the entire decision of GIFs. I could do that. Okay, next one. Suppression difficulty.
So is he using the verbiage that's in there, or is he
Yeah.
copying it out?
Out of the guide, and then we're editing it to make it specific to the incident.
Same copy.
Suppression difficulty index. That's saying at the 97th percentile for ERCs. That's what they're referring to that, and it says 97th percentile.
That's saying it's your 97th percentile conditions.
Yeah.
That's what your SDI is.
Yeah. Well, look at that. Looks like so much of that country is pretty easy to contain. 2 jumpers and with flappers, we can get them. We got this.
And just on the values one. Gonna have to edit this video.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of editing that goes on.
Yep, so I would look at that. It's always high for us mostly. We're biased, but I would look at your, hit that, go back and hit the, yeah.
Yeah, this area is.
Commercial timbers.
Yeah, a lot of commercial timber in there, yeah. Station sites, highways, potential evacuation, so what you could do is go in and you go back to your map, start looking at that stuff and see what's in there, but I can tell you what's in there. We've had done like 10 witness decisions the last 18 months over there. But you know that we're gonna have comm sites. There's comm site minus repeaters in there in the area. We have a wilderness study area. We have high sage grouse values in the area. And we have mining of a town, which the governor's sister lives in.
And
Oh, no, we're gonna cut and paste.
Here we go.
Let's see. So this, like, I'll grab a notebook and start writing stuff now, like to make sure that we're covering what we think we need to cover. This is where it can get kind of long and you can forget about stuff.
Yeah.
So we know, like I said, we would have, yeah, minus repeater, yeah. Yeah, look at the map. Let's look at the map and see. If we can decipher.
This is where that spatial inventory comes in real handy
Gonna
too.
get out of here.
Hit that arrow.
There you go.
Yep. And then go to,
There.
yeah, you're good.
Open up strategic assessment.
Yep, turn that square on right next to it.
All of those layers.
Turn those on. Oh, they are on.
To
And I'm sure those don't make any sense to you, Mike. But we'll make it make sense at some point.
X amount of your.
They make perfect sense to me. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? That's as crystal clear as spatial firefighting gets.
Yeah, CCF.
Or you can also open up the spatial inventory and I'll just.
Depends if you're a visual person or not. That looks like a really clean map, doesn't it?
And on the- this thing doesn't have-
So that's telling you, you have a pile of stuff going on beside that.
Yeah.
So let's go to what she said and do the inventory.
That is everything. Yeah.
Is that right there? Sarah?
This is telling us what the fire
It's
should have studied the risk. Yeah,
under your.
so everything there going through risk. And then risk.
I mean, your.
It's just the firefighter safety.
So up on the, where the blue tab is, arrow over.
To the left.
If you wanted to go on like the organization complexity, like a different section of it. Yeah. You want to have organization complexity. So,
It's safe.
Hit save.
Everything you did, go.
All my beautiful wordsmithing. Okay, incident info. Spatial inventory on the right.
Pick your arrows. All that.
Spatial
On the right.
inventory.
So you can hit that arrow right here too. Yep. So go down,
Click on, planning area. The
current.
Yeah, the top one. Then
So I can't do this. Yeah, no.
So we know we have safe house habitat, PHMA, GHMA.
you'll wanna do.
No, you can scroll
Change
down.
the 10
right?
to like
You can
100.
start.
So you can see them all.
That's waiting for them, so it'll read that, but all of those you should be able to
And
start.
then all the fire, spatial fire planning is what you're. Technically looking for right now.
Yeah, we already know our language covers the PHMA, GHMA stuff. It's all the stuff. It's just a lot easier to say, put the fire out, right? This is why we get mad at health town. Just kidding.
So there, you know, you got some kind of cultural something in there, you got special fish. Deserts. River ranges, mining areas.
Sheep.
Bighorn sheep, yeah.
Sheep. enough. I just think it was-
There still is, I think there's tag there this year. Jared's gonna go in there and grease one right off the road, and so. So this is where you just kind of get a good understanding of what is in the area and what infrastructure is out there, what cultural or, natural resources that we want to make a priority and manage.
So, yeah.
Fiat priority one. So, we went through our fiat areas and identified like priority area, which is more priority to fight fire, and it was only And the whole reason we did that was basically we said, okay, if we had a fire in this area. And what would be which is the more priority? The right flank or the left flank based on safe trails, right? One might be lacking nesting habitat versus winter habitat. Where could we put 3 dozers on this side versus 3 dozers on the other side? So it's saying it's high priority. It's got 19,000 acres of the highest priority to put the fire out.
Oh, so you can kind of pick these up. Where they're,
The acreage on the right, within the planning area, all those acreages are based on the planning area, as long as you hit the generate SI button. So as long as you generated the spatial inventory, it's gonna pick up in your planning area, how many acres of that type of habitat or resource are threatened by the fire.
they'll copy paste all this.
No,
Yeah.
no, we just,
And here's a tip too, if you scroll up a little bit more, there's an Excel logo, right, at the very top of that list. You can download that as an Excel file right there, yeah. So if that's a better way for you to look at it, you can just click on that, and then you have everything in one Excel file.
and what would be good with that is you're putting it on a different screen on you have multiple screens going to your desk.
Yeah.
Put that on a different screen because when you're gonna go back into your relative risk, you're gonna have to keep toggling back and forth to make sure you got it all.
Tab it out. Everything up and say, like 2 tabs.
Oh. I didn't know that.
Probably should go and edit in one.
When someone's got a 64-inch laptop screen, yeah, it works out.
Split it right down the middle.
That's right.
But as a fire, I mean, so I had that spreadsheet up, and then you're looking at that, and you're knowing what maps you need to make. So that's how it helped me, is by use that as like my checklist, and, okay, I need a map of bighorn habitat, I need a map of, you know, whatever other habitats are listed on there. That's kind of giving you an idea of what maps would help make this a better product.
Question is it doesn't matter for us right now.
Yeah.
In EDU, is it the new Sage Grouse layers roll
In EDU,
right now?
it's still pulling, no, it's new.
It's all new stuff,
Yeah.
okay. So that's.
It's reading spatial fire planning service, so what we have in spatial.
They used to be spelled like a click thing
The decision rationale,
or safe trap. Safe traps aren't done management decision.
Mm-hmm.
That's updated to the decision side.
Yes, because all of our management directions stayed the same with the exception of the new. So all of ours is still 2015, right? When we go back to training, yeah, all of ours is still coming, all of ours is still derived out of the 2015, with the exception of about 2 or 3 new management directions
Yeah.
that are part of the 2025 plan.
Okay.
But everything else is still being derived out of the 2015 plan. And our in spatial fire planning service, we have language. I'm telling you, Elizabeth, because you're a planner, because I know you like this, but so we link it back to the 2015 plan, we link it back to the 2025 plan. And we have a link to the bi-state plan for Carson district and those districts that have bi-state habitat. So, yeah, we've covered our bases on the sage grouse for sure.
only thing changes is the spatial portion of it because the map changed.
Yes. Well, and there was some language change. There was some new management direction that came out of the new plan too.
But mostly it just has to do with the acreage of change to this thing.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so. Oh yeah, paste that thing in there. Oh, you got it in there. So values include, we gotta go back up because we're not done. Greater sage grouse habitat, it's not SFA, it's PHMA now, so we'll get rid of SFA.
Yeah, that's, yeah, in the guide, you're gonna have, I need to change a lot of those SFA references.
I would put Midas in front of repeater, or, yeah. Midas repeater, and I think the historic Midas mining district cultural alert zone. And numerous communication towers on Midas Mountain, I think, I don't know, we're calling it Midas Mountain right now.
Yes.
Nope. Something's not working for you.
Well, we do have multiple agents, like we used to do.
And then I would get somehow, yeah, get that moved over. Above average prime fuel loading is somewhat mitigated by early season. That's not true. I would just get rid of that and say observed fire behavior is considered a high hazard. There are very few natural fire growth, the time of year, high fire frequency, observed fire behavior, aggression during the first operational period, potential for large fire growth, proximity value risk, elevator risk assessment. I think that's good. I think we can also go in and add, we need to add some more stuff in here. So I think after PHMA, I think we want to put in there about endangered, threatened or
TNE.
T&E species within T&E species within our riparian areas, within the streams.
One of the,
Just basically Fraser Creek is it, right? LCT?
oh, right area in the burn area, but yeah, it's within that polygon.
Red band trout, everything to the west.
Yeah. It's also here, something.
Is it LCT or red band? Is it LCT? Yeah. See, there you go. Perfect. Riparian areas, comma, minus repeater. And then critical, I'd say critical,
I mean, the whole
Wow,
area
that
now
helped out.
is, they're looking at butterfly.
for the monarch butterflies.
So I mean, technically, we're supposed to review all of that now, that's their proposed.
I think right there, we've got most everything covered for, right? And then also the town of Midas. We need to,
Yeah,
we need
so I'm
to,
gonna say urban interface.
yeah. And I would say maybe go after the towers on Mount, no, I would not put it there.
The governor's system.
The towers are already, it says numerous communication towers on my
Mhm.
The,
In regards to the Midas repeater, That's fine. what that, the town of Midas? No, we'll do another sentence after that. I think, yeah, the town of Midas is, town of Midas to the west of the fire remains threatened.
So not to interrupt your path, but we're at 3:15 and we still need strategic assessment and strategic course of action in addition to this in the next 30 minutes.
Sarah, can you work on this?
How many of those, just is still annoying?
Five. I still owe you five, yeah. 6 now.
they can find every year, so 5 last year, 5 last year.
Can I bring in a case of toilet paper and we call one even or something?
Yeah. No, we don't need toilet paper anymore. We got our
Okay,
people back.
yeah, I owe you some decisions. Jared's got whiffed his credit with me.
Go up, where, oh, yeah.
I went on to the next one.
So are you working on
Okay,
that?
so in this one, we're not even gonna, if we're running out of time, we would update this. I would just, let's just move on, but we would update this and talk about economic, so grazing, right? Grazing's a big thing in the area. Mining's a big thing in the area, the town of Midas, cultural alert area around the Midas mining district. We've had large fires in the area, tons of ESR work in the area. We'll probably talk about the Esmeralda fire, the Winter's fire. These are all ESR efforts and money that's been put into the ground out there. We would talk about the fuel treatments that have occurred along Scraper Springs Road and to the north and to the south that actually held the fire. On this fire, they held it. And yeah, it talks about Turkey their winter range. I would just say wildlife for big game winter range because now it's turning into moose, field deer, and elk and bighorn sheep. Okay,
And
we're building on it.
yeah, and horses, but we don't get to hunt those. They don't bring a lot of revenue into us.
If it's in there, all you have to do is,
Those just long-tailed elk.
I check with the public, something there,
Social and economic concerns,
and then we check it.
communication towers, right? That can be putting people out of business. Power plant, not really a power plant. We do have an active mine occurring out there. Transmission lines are happening. We can't shut down power lines due to the mining activity in the area. The Ruby pipeline is due south of it, right? We could talk about that. County road and highway and the impacts to that, and then I-80, which would have an impact on I-80 on this one, so we take that off. All right, next one, relative risk. Rating says, yep, you better order a team. Since you're not doing well. Okay, relative risk in July, yeah, let's go with high, and we would grab information out of that. Cultural alert zones, communication towers. Talk about all of our sage grouse habitat, everything that we're talking about up above. Fire growth, right? We're gonna talk about our fire behavior, fire growth. Time of year, we're not expecting a season-ending event coming anytime soon.
I'm gonna highlight this real quick, because Craig brought it up. So this field that you're populating right now goes into the organizational needs assessment.
Top,
And yep, exactly. And that's what kind of starts. So just think of this phrase right here as a summary of everything you just did.
Yep.
But it's also gonna be the very first thing that they read in the O&A tab.
and then I would hit save. I'd hit ready for production or publication. And let's go to strategy. And it's gonna be really simple.
Are you in there too?
No.
Right. It's just when this is what you gotta verbalize, right? When you got multiple people.
Are you doing it? You're working on it? Oh, good.
Yep. And that's all it takes. Just let her get out of it and then you get into it and then you can go and do whatever you need to
Does he,
do.
did you just get out of it? Should he go back to relative risk and then come back in?
He should be okay.
All right,
The only danger is pushing up edits at this
Yeah.
time where they would conflict with each other, right?
okay.
So as long as we're not doing that. So that's probably just cleaner just to say, don't work in that tab.
Strategic assessment, we'll have to give it a name.
So, if you go back, is there any already there? Hold on. Don't be going down, all the way down.
Yeah, hit that arrow there.
There's already. Bunch of them there.
Just take one of these.
So if you click on it and then scroll up,
So we did, click up, you already clicked on it, go out.
that's where you put. The, in the text, I guess for this one, we for WSAs. So if we had an objective,
So we would put for WSAs, working with the Bureau of Land Management or BLM or something like that, whatever we say, working with the Bureau rep, authorization has been approved for mechanized equipment and retardant within wilderness study areas.
Yeah.
Under a full suppression, strategic strategy.
little form, to put it in there.
Yep. And then we go down and do the next one, right? AML, yeah, there's AML area stuff in there. That one should. Yep,
Next one.
yep,
And this is where as we get better, see, I mean, we can populate the text in here in Spatial Fire Planning Service. So as we start getting better at this, I mean, we can do this and have everything updated to where it's all the language that we're trying to type in now, we'll just pull it in automatically.
yeah. Because this is saved canned language.
Mhm.
And
it's-
For you, Dylan.
Are we,
What's
I need
that?
to click them on?
Are you on?
Are they already on? When I scroll down, Mike, keep going. Are all these already gonna be included right now into it, or do we have to click them on?
No, so yeah, just like you've been doing, you have to, once you click on one,
I think it's saying including the
just
decision.
whatever, yeah, click on one and then go back up to the top, how you've been looking at it. And there's one of them that says include, right? Those
Yeah,
three
yeah.
check box down there, include in decision.
Okay,
Right there, yeah, highlight. So if you highlight it, it puts it right at the front of it. If you include it, it just includes it in the list. And if you check off critical value at risk, it
brings it over.
includes it as a C bar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, those on there because we did them last year, or those pulled up with the spatial fire planning stuff?
these are in there because you told the decision last year to pull it in,
Oh,
based
thank
off
God.
of last year's spatial fire planning service data.
But that's just for this incident?
Yes,
That's why.
yes,
Okay.
just for the system.
We'll have to actually work with Sarah on how to get those, to tell them to go find them and pull them in. All right, so we got a couple in there. Let's save.
Oh, that's it. Maybe 20. It's just adding them as.
I think as soon as you say include the decision, they just come in. When you're new, you're typing a new one in.
Yes.
You're creating a new one from scratch. So, okay, you already hit save last time, so we don't have to do it again. Go down all the way, ready for publication.
Unless you want to check that order. Yeah, so hit that and then scroll down. And this is the order that they're going to be printed in your decision. And this is where you can click on the, yep, if you want to, yep. So this is what before we used to have to spend hours and hours trying to format that list, show which one's top. You just drag them around to order the list how you want it ordered.
Okay, we'll pretend that's what we want. Save order, oh, all right,
Oh,
it doesn't matter, you're good. Fire, go over, actually scroll down, shouldn't have been anymore. Yep, firefighter safety. Oh, wait, go back, sorry.
strategic course.
Yeah, we gotta go over the course of action. This one we have. Suppression strategy, you have to click that probably, you gotta name it.
Scroll all the way down first and let's make sure you don't have any. You gotta go, yeah, that bottom carrot. See, everything's in the bottom. So you do have
Oh, yeah, that's what.
that one in there. If you
We have
want to
that one,
just work on that one.
it comes in,
And
but you're gonna need to. Scroll, oh no, you did it, you're good, scroll down and include. Put decision, yep. There's no save button, so it's included, all right. Perfect, ready for publication. Scroll down.
And this one's not required, so we can skip.
Yeah, we're skipping it, we got time. Be safe,
under smoke.
we don't need that, we're good.
Works.
Okay, go to relative risk rating, this is what he's gonna say is the first thing that showed up. You've seen that before, told us that we're screwed. So we got a Caleb and a Troy and a Dozer, they don't even know what's gonna hit them. Yep. No, can't move it, it's already pre-populating.
Plus
See,
you
this is
have
all the
to-
stuff that we brought in.
You have to uncheck ready for publication if you want to edit that.
Oh, yeah. We take that as a phase. Yep, looks great. Yep, looks great. Yep, oh man, looks great, type 3 flare. All right. Now we're on the decision. Wait a minute.
There,
Maybe there's a there.
So are you listed as an approver on this, NVEKD? How's he able to see that?
I don't know. Yeah, I was wondering that too.
You
That
can
was
view,
cool.
but he can't
You
edit.
can't edit. Okay.
They
That's
don't,
what it is.
toggle it over.
We've been able to see it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it lets you do everything, but actually, that's why that is weird.
It's like that last year.
I don't know if it was like that or not.
No, I didn't think so because last year, yeah, it was like that last year because I would email Jared what the decision rationale was and he could cut and paste it in and do whatever he wanted with it.
Right.
Run it through Copilot.
No, I didn't do.
So here, I think if I can
Copilot ran it
take the
for me.
report over, we're ready, right? I mean, you guys walked through and did
Yeah, I
the
think
we
we're
do. Okay. Let me have that cord back then. We're done.
You want?
Well,
That's not, you wanna know why? It's because it's not May 17th.
Problem, yeah.
Perfect. That's what it is.
problem, goes on,
Good job, Lifton Sky.
Yeah.
all the witnesses.
Now you have to do that with Little League World Series happening in the background and me losing my mind because some 10-year-old can't hit a ball.
Okay. So everything you guys just did, right, is now checked off. Agency administrator rationale showing that we still need it. The only reason it's still showing as needed is because I need to slide this over. So This is one, I'm just gonna walk through it, but Matt, Jared, whoever else, I mean, if you guys have insights that, you know, you wanna talk through as far as what you wanna see in a decision rationale or kind of what you include in there. I do think it's important, you know, I was messing around with this and by no means, you know, is this a template, but again, I think decision approvers include Bureau Representative, Tuscarora Field Office, BLM Field Office Manager, and Wildland Fire Service Unit Fire Chief. Some kind of clarifying statement, I think, would be beneficial. Again, there's no policy that states what has to be in a decision rationale, but this is where we highlight where we collaborate and where we meet our policy requirements for collaboration and so forth. So the decision that you're doing here is to continue managing the incident, transitioning to an ad hoc type 3 IMT under a full suppression strategy, right? Again, that's key, right? We got a secretary memo that just came out saying we're going direct on everything. We're going full suppression on everything. I'm not saying that's the right way to do it by any means, but we need to be very clear in our decisions that if we are in fact employing the full suppression strategy, that goes into the decision. Because when you get reviewed, whether it be for a large fire review, stage grouse review, or anything else, that's the first thing they fall back to is the management style clear in the decision rationale. And by saying in that first sentence that it's a full suppression strategy, you are being very clear. Again, I'm not arguing. I think there's a lot of information out there between direct and indirect right now spreading around. And I'm a little worried about it, to be honest with you. But as long as we're showing that we're going full suppression on all these fires, that meets the intent of the secretary.
And even fires in the WSA, even fires we can't access, they are still a full suppression fire. Even if it's these mist tactics or any other type of tactic, it's still full suppression. We don't have one piece of 1 acre of BLM land that's been identified for not full suppression. It's all full suppression. Dolly Barnes maybe is full suppression, but and maybe it's after every other fire gets put out. Yeah, they'll put it out. Yeah.
Other parts of the decision rationale, you know, these are all questions that you can answer. This template is in the guide. There's a couple different examples of ways that you can rephrase that as well. I'm not saying this is the best example of a decision rationale, but this is a pretty good one that meets all the elements that I would be looking for in a decision rationale.
But does it show that specific language on private land? We coordinated with NVEKD.
Well, if there's private land, there would be.
Private land.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Then you've got the complication.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, if there's maps, if you have maps, because again, this is gonna be front and center on the decision, so the decision rationale is the very first thing. So if you have any maps that you want to be highlighted, it would be a good idea to put them in the decision rationale as well. Once, if I were to edit that, even just take out a period, you can see that changes the save button to blue. So again, the workflow is make an edit, hit save. Once you hit save, you hit ready for publication. Once you hit ready for publication, you come over here to the end.
That's the part that can only be done by an approver, right?
Yes,
So there's.
if I'm an approver.
So there, if I'm the one that's writing the decision, there's no way I can put the maps at the top.
No, only the approver can write the decision. That's what it means. In the past, Jared used to be able to come to me and say, WFDSS writer, write my decision rationale. I'll go in there and push the button and approve it. Now, I, as the approver, Jared has to log in and type his own decision
And then
rationale.
if we want any of the maps that you're talking about, if we want any of those maps you're talking about, we have to send them to the approver such that they come.
If you want them in this section, yes. Yes. Yep. So once that is ready, go back in. Yeah,
Did you get it? Did you get access finally?
Your profile, did you put the approval button? The little button made you approve.
okay, so everything is in there, right? We got the required decision elements. We are ready for approval. Draft PDF is in progress. This is another nice feature we didn't have last year, right? Last year we could not create a draft. You're going to view it by approving the decision. So once I am ready to approve, so as an approver, you can set the length of days in between required assessments. Matt, what would you say to that? What kind of time frame would you think is acceptable for an agency administrator on a fire like this?
And this is the first, like, and we're expecting this thing to be moving, I would say 2 days. Give us a day to get our feet back under us, maybe 3 days, if we have to really look at. Let's see, if that fire across the, River Springs Road, it's a battle, we're working on doing it anyway, right? We're not doing it.
Well, I guess that's another question, right? So I mean, this talks about, this will be setting up just the way we would reassess it, but we go outside of our parameters already. It's
That's a trigger, yeah.
You're triggering, you're doing it anyway.
Yeah, so what you're telling WFDS is I am going to come back into WFDS within this window of time and reaffirm that this decision is still valid, still within the planning area, course of action still valid, all that's still there.
Yeah, I would do 2-3 days. So there's a lot of moving parts happening right now. Teams coming in, tons of resources are coming.
Jared's throwing the gauntlet down one day.
One day, I just think I don't think you have enough time to get enough information back from the team coming in, and leaving the team to get information, making a decision. That's my thought.
Yeah, and I can see that side. I can see that side too. And whatever, I mean, I'm not saying it to set up an argument or say there's one right, one wrong answer. I'm just, you need to be engaged, right? I mean, you can't just say the decision's done. I'm gonna revisit it 7 days down the road and set that thing for 7 days.
Early in the incident, shorter window.
Yeah.
Later in the incident, when we're in mop-up phase, longer windows.
Right, yeah. If you have anything additional that you want to type in, you know, just as part of the history file. I don't know exactly what this looks like in the history file long term, but you can actually put in additional notes here. I'm just gonna say NA for now, just put something in there. The other part of you as an approver approving the decision is you're checking this off, saying I have reviewed incident tactics, confirm that they are consistent with my incident strategy, and then it's asking you to make sure that all required elements have been checked before hitting save. So it's putting the emphasis back on the approver to confirm that yes, all of our fire management direction from our land and resource plan is in here. Tactics are consistent with the incident strategy. And then you can revisit that by looking at the 204 a couple of days down the road and making sure that the incident assignment list or the division assignment list on your 204 match up with what your expectations are.
From the planning meetings.
And then planning meetings and strategy meetings. All the other meetings. Yeah. So that's the process, right? So once we hit save, that is me as the approver. I'm still waiting for Jared and Matt. So I mean, you guys can go at any time. I'm not saying we have to do it right now, but this is basically what we've done. And then if you want to preview, preview. Whenever the button's not blue, that's why. So I'm going to save this, let that download, and then. So this is what your final decision looks like. Again, everything's landscape. I kind of like the portrait just because all the images we put in there are portrait oriented images, but everything in the new WFDSS is landscape. So just be thinking about that when you format your maps and all your attachments and so forth. Goes in decision rationale. Again, you know, we didn't put a lot of time into editing this, but you guys can spend as much time editing that whenever you want to. Front and center, strategic summary. We didn't walk through this, but part of the process is you check off whether you're doing a monitor, confine, point zone protection, or full suppression strategy.
Is that a checkbox or that slider bar?
That's a checkbox.
It used to be a slider bar, right?
Yeah, it used to be a slider bar, but that's just a checkbox in that strategy tab. WFDSS can override 209. 209 is the authoritative data source, but in WFDSS, if you check the box saying that WFDSS is the authoritative data source, it overrides 209 and Irwin. So if 209 reports that your fire is full suppression And then with this report reporting that your fire is monitored, and you check off that with this is the authoritative data source, your fire is gonna get reported to the monitor.
We shouldn't do that now. We shouldn't need to do that here. We should never.
No, not here, yeah, because you guys have such limited other than full suppression options.
We should always.
But areas that do have other than full suppression options do have a reason to. We just don't have the area.
No.
We don't have the country to do it.
Well, I
Well,
think
yeah.
we always want, everything in Elko, this area, we always want 209 to be our authoritative source. I don't know why, other than something like that, I don't know why it just would ever be authoritative data source other than 209.
Because at least with WFDS, you have somebody that knows, in 209, you can have a dispatcher that doesn't know anything or anything, submitting that 209 without you even reviewing it before the next morning.
Yeah, I think you should be correct on the next 209. Yes.
That's why. All of the other objectives that we put in here, I mean, you can see, you can see how it flows. I'm not gonna, and you guys can get in there, you can download the PDF if you want to, but basically, all of this information that we talked about is now in, and I just saw that. That probably shouldn't be in, looks like we got this language showing up in, no, it's in the cooperative stakeholder section, so it's in there. Anyway, everything's color coded, so I can see all the high risks are red. If you have any moderate risks, they're orange. Low risks are blue. All the strategic assessment language that we bring in. Again, all of this is edited in Spatial Fire Planning Service, so we can go into Spatial Fire Planning Service and update this whenever we need to. Estimated final fire cost, again, we have 4.5 million set as ours. You can see the symbology there with the low, moderate, high. And at the end, this is all, and this may be kind of confusing because this is going to have the language from that we used to have, and then when we did the reclip, this is going to be the new language as well. So that's just because of the way the decision is. If you do a new decision in WFDS this year, it's not going to be pulling in any of the old language. It's going to all be the new language. The only reason this is showing the old language is because we did this decision last July as a training decision. So it's pulling in that as well, in addition to the new stuff. Yeah, you can see, yeah, all that information is in here, loaded in. If you want to edit that stuff, a lot of this stuff can be edited in Spatial Fire Planning Service. One of the things that we're skipping over is I've given the other fire planners at least half hour, 45 minutes to kind of go through all of the data that they have in Spatial Fire Planning Service and talk about what they have for subunit non-overlapping and subunit overlapping objective shapes, in addition to the other unit shapes in Spatial Fire Planning Service. So I'm sure Sarah would be more than willing to facilitate that meeting if you guys had a need, but that's the only reason I bring that up is because that's in the red book. That's one of the suggested items for WFDS refresher is to review your Spatial Fire Planning Service data. And the reason I brought that up in the authorities table is eventually we're gonna have to come up with a formal process where we sit down with the Bureau once a year, go through what we have, get the Bureau's edits, load that into Spatial Fire Planning Service, be ready for fires. So that's the reason I bring it up the way I brought it up. The rest of that information, again, I'm gonna scroll through it real quick just to show you everything, but we've got Elko's got a lot of good spatial fire planning language. You guys were front and center on spatial fire planning, so definitely got a lot of good spatial fire planning language in there. And then as you get towards the bottom, all that information is summarized based off of land use plan and so forth. So any questions?
Yeah, so you got this to PDF. When you go back to the decision, it showed Jared, myself, and you.
Mm-hmm.
Are we all showing, we are all three supposed to approve it?
Yeah.
But you got it to a PDF form
Mm-hmm.
after you approved it. I
Draft.
used to.
Draft.
So that's not gonna work. You won't, when the last, does it matter which person is the last person that approves it?
No, and it did in old WFDS. The only reason is because the last approver was the one that got the notification that the periodic assessment is due.
Yeah.
So if you were the training agency, you always want to be the last one because you got that notification. There's no notification from WFDS, so there's no order.
So as long as all three happen, whoever's
Yep.
figuring, tracking who's getting these decisions
Yeah.
signed,
Now, the one thing, notice how I cannot publish the
because
decision?
they have to sign it.
Yes. Once we are all showing there as approved, then any of us can go in and publish a decision.
Yeah.
So that's where the order is still important, where between the three of us, or if it's, whatever your approvers are,
Yeah,
whoever's gonna be the final approver has to also say, I'm gonna publish the decision. Otherwise, a GAD has to go in sometime after the fact and publish it, and in that window, nobody else can view the decision until it's published.
Okay.
Right? So be keeping that in mind too. That's the other thing as an approver. If you're the last approver, you not only need to approve the decision, but once you are the last approver, this will light up blue and then you will publish it as well.
and that means that periodic assessments aren't periodic assessments, they're new decisions.
Yeah.
And that means this whole thing has to go through each time.
Yeah.
All three people in the same, hopefully the same order are doing it.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Every time you're doing a periodic assessment, you are republishing a decision. You're not having to go through and retype everything.
No.
You're just adding additional text into that decision rationale field, and then publishing that. So that's it. That's how to publish a decision in 3 hours or less. So if this was a real fire, I mean, we just walked through a WFDSS decision from beginning to end. And I mean, I know there's a lot of cutting and pasting, but you guys are ready to publish a decision and you're ready to go on your next step, whatever that looks like. So that's the goal of the class. The goal of the class is to give everybody the knowledge they need to at least get that initial decision published. And then also give the fire planners and whoever else are going to be messing around in that decision enough information to take that decision and build it into what is next. Whether that's working with a team, whether that's working with a strategic operational planner. I mean, there's people that are gonna be able to support you with this decision that come in after that, and that's just getting your decision set up to be able to have them come in and take it from there. So are there other questions? Hopefully. I didn't know if I'd be able to squeeze it all into 3 hours or less, but I did, so. Thank you, appreciate the time, appreciate the attention.
Get it, Bill.
Yeah.
Just close it down in 3 hours.
Here we go. And technically, isn't this 2 decisions that I've done for Elko District between this
No,
training decision and last
We
week's
did.
training?
It's not training.
I published, I mean, I can show you the log that says I.
That's not blue. Not published.
Just so. If you guys, and then I make this, if you guys ever, I mean, I know you got a lot of people, but if you ever do need help, reach out. I know I'm gone all the time during the summer, but if I'm around, I'm available and you guys need help.
Dylan's published decisions and being the plan section chief in a different state. Dylan's published decisions at baseball games.
No, I got the direction to do it at the baseball game. I had to go back to the hotel after the baseball game and publish it before I left the next morning. So, no, that's, I have done decisions. I've published decisions from Canada. I've published decisions from everywhere. You get me a hotel and I can publish a decision. So even if I'm not around, if you guys send me a team's message, if you do need help, just reach out. All you gotta do is ask.
Hey, if you're returning a vehicle to Salt Lake. Well, no, but you can publish a decision.
I can return a vehicle to Salt Lake.
Yes, not my.
I do have a history with your vehicle, so you may not want to let me drive your vehicles.
I guess those are different.
Okay.
Like a rainbow sense.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I was driving the Salt Lake truck. Yeah.
Said that before.
And check it,
I did.
and then check, and you save it, it should be.
I mean, if there's questions,
We didn't, like, he didn't assign you an approval.
yeah, you're not in there.
You're our approval, but he didn't assign you.
Oh, Yeah,
That's why I couldn't.
yeah, so make sure both your profiles are set up now.
I know how to copy.
You know, trust those fact shots in there.